Chapter 104. In short, the appearance of this Dark Knight challenger set off a wave of excitement among the martial artists in Iron Cloud Citadel. In the beginning, there were still people who did it half-heartedly. But later on, the Dark Knight challengers stopped coming after those half-heartedly dealt with them. Thus he became the weakling. Wherever he went, there would be a group of people pointing at him. Look, that's him. He always bragged about how awesome he is, but after a fight with the Dark Knight challenger he didn't go. Thus some people teased him. Why didn't he go? Because he wasn't qualified. Ha ha ha. Oh, so that's how it is. My elder brother is a genius. And here I thought he was really awesome. Ha ha ha. Thus he lost a lot of face. With the lesson of the past, how could the latecomers not be spirited? Fight for one more day, one more day. Fight for one more day. That's one more day of fame. Chu Yang circled around a few times. When he returned to the main street, he was already a pale young man with messy hair. There was a mole on the left side of his face and a scar on the right side of his face. It looked very ugly. Chu Yang swaggered forward with a majestic gait and rushed towards his target for the day. Someone in the crowd suddenly shouted as if they had discovered a new continent. Oh, look, it's the Dark Knight challenger. Over there, over there. Isn't that him? Quick, 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 follow him. It looks like he's going to the Meteor Martial Club from yesterday. Could it be that the Meteor Martial Club actually held on yesterday? That's possible. Hey, let's start betting. I bet that the Meteor Martial Club can still hold on today. 10 silver taels. Come, come, if you are interested, quickly place your bets. I bet on the Dark Knight challenger 10 silver taels. I bet. A group of busybodies swarmed forward, chattering excitedly. They clustered around this Dark Knight challenger and walked towards the Meteor Martial Club in a grandiose manner. Chu Yang looked at the sky and strode forward. In his heart he found it funny. He did not expect that the way he perfected his martial arts would bring so much fun to Iron Cloud Citadel. Ever since he had comprehended the soft force of water, Chu Yang began to think about how to apply this soft force of water to sword techniques, palm techniques, fist techniques, and so on. There were gentle wind sword and floating cloud sword. These were all gentle sword techniques. However, it was the sword moves that were soft and not the strength that was soft. Chu Yang had to consider how to make a hard sword emit a soft force like water. She had to be gentle but not gentle. It had to be gentle but it had to be lethal. For a continent that revered strength, this was an area that no one had ever touched upon before. The combination of hardness and gentleness did not mean that one moment one was as mighty as a mountain, and the next moment was as gentle as the wind. Instead, it was the transformation of the internal form of the vital qi into every punch and every sword. Only then could it be the combination of hardness and gentleness. Chu Yang was very clear that if he really did it, then he would undoubtedly create a precedent for martial arts in the Chongtian continent. Moreover, it would also be a powerful life-saving technique that could kill the enemy. It was easy to imagine how difficult it would be for such a cultivation method to be integrated into a peerless divine technique like the heaven-overlapping divine technique. There was only fighting, fighting, non-stop fighting. Only by comprehending bit by bit from fighting could he finally conclude. If he always sat there meditating, it would be useless even if he cracked his head thinking. Therefore, Chu Yang transformed into a Dark Knight challenger and went to challenge these famous martial artists. Moreover, Chu Yang's challenges were purposeful. He challenged 2 or 3 people a day. One of them would definitely have a strong technique, and the other would lean towards gentleness. After every battle, Chu Yang had to spend a lot of effort to recall the battle and find out all the ways to use the power of water in the battle. During this time, the mysterious sword spirit of the Calamity Sword remained silent and did not appear even once. It was clear that it wanted Chu Yang to comprehend it himself. He remembered the first time he went out to challenge and came back to comprehend. The sword spirit said, "What you comprehend is yours. What I tell you is Calamity Swords." This was the fundamental difference. Looking at the Meteor Martial Arts Club that had already appeared in front of him, Chu Yang rolled up his sleeves and roared excitedly. He rushed in. Another challenge had begun. Behind him, the crowd began to make a fuss and started to place their bets. The banker was very busy. At the same time, Tai Butian was also frowning. Ever since he took control of Iron Cloud, there had never been a time when he found it so difficult to make a decision. Tang Xian Sheng. Looking at the 12 reasons listed by Chu Yang, Tai Butian could not help but sigh. There was no need to investigate. These reasons all pointed to the same thing. Tang Xianshang was a spy. Even someone as wise as Butian Tai was certain of this when he saw the 12 suspicious points without any doubt. Tai Butian only felt a kind of shock. Yes, shock. A spy in Iron Cloud Nation for 10 years, rising like the wind and rising like the water, standing tall without falling. Moreover, he had become a saint of Iron Cloud Nation. Was this still a spy? All the officials of Iron Cloud Nation were not as good as a spy. He was an honest official who made decisions for the people. He was upright. Inside and outside the imperial court, everyone praised him. All the provinces and counties supported him. Tai Butian smiled bitterly. Such a spy. If such a spy were to cause trouble, then the effect that he could play would be devastating. He could easily control the direction of public opinion. He could use the anger of the people and other methods that could be used but were not easy to control. He could turn the entire Iron Cloud Nation into a pot of porridge. As for purging him, it was obviously impossible to arrest him openly and sentence him to death. No one would believe that such a good official was a spy from another nation. If things were not handled well, there would be immediate chaos. Tai Butian was silent for a while. Then he asked, "What did minister say?" Wu Qianqian, who was sitting across from him, said somewhat uneasily, "Minister Chu said that he wanted to see what Minister Chu thought first." Tai Butian's imposing manner was too strong. As long as she was in front of him, Wu Qianqian inexplicably felt that she had to lower her head. Moreover, that imposing manner of a king made it difficult for her to breathe. Wu Qianqian admired Chu Yang greatly for this. That guy came from the same sect as her and his skills were not as good as hers. However, when he was in front of Tai Butian, he was not the least bit nervous. In fact, he was even more relaxed than Tai Butian. What was even more ridiculous was that sometimes when the two of them were together, Tai Butian would actually be a little nervous. This was really unbelievable. What do I mean? No. Tai Butian smiled. It's true that I wanted to let him know, but he would definitely not listen to me. After hearing Chu Yang's words, Tai Butian's tense mood inexplicably relaxed. This king of Hell Chu, did he go missing again? Tai Butian tilted his head and blinked. This showed that His Highness was in a good mood. He actually joked. King of Hell Chu. Tai Butian really wanted to laugh when he thought of these 3 words. He really did not expect Chu Yang to establish such a fearsome reputation in such a short period of time. He was too talented. Yes. His whereabouts have been very mysterious during this period. Wu Qianqian was a little uneasy and worried for Chu Yang. That's good, that's good. Tai Butian's reply almost made Wu Qianqian fall off her chair. A person who was not content with his job and went missing every few days, and His Highness's evaluation was actually, that's good, that's good. What kind of logic was this? Chapter 105. Wu Qianqian agreed in confusion. How could he let go and do it? According to what he said, what did Chu Yang mean? Tai Butian smiled and said meaningfully, I remember Minister Chu said to be gentle. Ha ha ha, she remembered what Chu Yang said before. I will be very very gentle to those who can't be touched but have to be touched. She couldn't help but smile. She could roughly guess Chu Yang's plan. Wu Qianqian was puzzled again. Why? Gentle? Is he reminding me to be gentle to Chu Yang? Does this Royal Highness want to be a matchmaker between me and Chu Yang? Or, Chu Yang wants Tai Butian to be a matchmaker? Why did he say Minister Chu said to be gentle? Thinking of this, she couldn't help but blush. This is too embarrassing. Seeing Wu Qianqian blushing, Tai Butian's eyes flashed with envy. Then he said in a playful voice, Miss Wu, your face is so red. What are you thinking about? Wu Qianqian was shocked and at a loss. Chu Yang is indeed a good man. Tai Butian said with a smile, if you are Miss Wu, you have to work hard. Wu Qianqian became more and more shy. She lowered her head timidly. In fact, whether it was her or Chu Yang, the two of them didn't have any other thoughts about each other. But somehow, all the rumors pointed to one point. The two of them had an affair. Chu Yang didn't care. His heart was as hard as stone now. He didn't think about these things at all. What other people think is their business. What does it have to do with me? But Wu Qianqian was different. During this period, Wu Qianqian was met with such ambiguous gazes wherever she went. Slowly, from the initial anger and shyness to now, she became numb and indifferent. It became as if there was really such a thing. So, her mentality was also slowly changing. It had to be said that this kind of subtle influence was really effective. Every time Minister Chu searched, he found elixirs and strange metals. What did he use them for? After knowing that Chu Yang already had a plan, Tai Butian relaxed and couldn't help but be concerned about these things. These were all requested by Chu Yang himself. Tai Butian had also agreed to it. There were many elixirs and metals in the palace. There was no need to haggle with Chu Yang. Besides, what the Imperial Palace had might not be available here. But what the Imperial Palace had, the Imperial Palace definitely had. Therefore, Tai Butian turned a blind eye to it and allowed Chu Yang to do whatever he wanted. However, he was still very curious. Why does Chu Yang collect these things? She had never seen him use them, and they were not prepared for Heaven Mending Pavilion. He was just one person, so how could he need so many spirit medicines? It's fine if I only need spirit medicine, but there's bound to be a time when I get injured, right? This could be explained as fear of death. But what was the use of so many rare metals? I really don't know about this. Every time those things arrive, Chu Yang will arrange for them to be transported to a warehouse designated by him. Wu Qianqian suddenly paused midway as she remembered something. Chu Yang's small warehouse was right next to his room in Butian Pavilion. However, in Wu Qianqian's impression, that small room wasn't big at all. Logically speaking, with the continuous confiscation of items, that small room should have been filled up several times. Why was it that they were still sending things in? Then when I have time I will go take a look. Tai Butian smiled happily. He felt a sense of pleasure from exploring. If there is nothing else, I will take my leave, Wu Qianqian said. She was not Tai Butian's subordinate. Beyond the Heavens sect and Tai Butian had a cooperative relationship. She was only here to help. Of course, Wu Yunliang also had a little plan. If Wu Qianqian could become the Empress or Princess of Iron Cloud. However, based on the current situation, Wu Yunliang's plan had no hope of success. This is a letter from your father. Tai Butian took out a letter and handed it to Wu Qianqian. Thank you very much. Wu Qianqian excitedly received it. There were 3 letters. One was for Bao Kuanglei, one was for Wu Qianqian, and one was for Tai Butian himself. Of course, other than the person involved, no one knew what Wu Yunliang said in the letter to Tai Butian. Watching Wu Qianqian leave, Tai Butian's expression changed. Finally, he let out a sigh. He thought of that king of Hell Chu and could not help but shake his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. This Minister Chu's way of doing things was really hard to see through. In this period of time, his methods could be said to be endless. Even his origin, which was so clear, had been made confusing by himself. Chu Yang came from beyond the Heavens sect. This was not a secret. But Chu Yang made up a few biographies for himself. First, a member of an aristocratic family. His family declined and wandered in Jianghu. Second, a descendant of a general of Iron Cloud who died in battle. Third, a disciple of a hidden expert. Legend has it that he had the power to capture dragons and tigers. Fourth, a disciple of a great scholar. Although he did not have the strength to truss a chicken, he was a genius. Fifth, a disciple of a clan who came down to train. Moreover, there were witnesses and evidence for each of these claims. If you investigated, you would be able to find these people. Tai Butian really couldn't understand why Chu Yang was making things so complicated and confusing. Chu Yang's whereabouts during this period of time were mysterious, but Tai Butian knew that he was definitely organizing Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Tai Butian was also looking forward to this Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Although he knew that this was Chu Yang's personal power, he also believed that once the critical moment came, Heavenly Armament Pavilion would make a move. Tai Butian wanted to use Chu Yang to manage Butian Pavilion and work for Iron Cloud to defeat Di Wuqing Ro. However, Chu Yang also wanted to make use of this world-sweeping war situation to temper his own strength and influence. This was a win-win situation. As for after the world was at peace, to be honest, Tai Butian did not have that kind of extravagant hope of victory. So he also did not think. At the same time in the Great Zhao Empire, in the Prime Minister's manor, Di Wuqing Ro sat in a chair. looking at the pile of information on the table with a calm expression. But his fingers were tapping on the armrest. His movements were very slow, as if he only tapped once in a long time. Opposite him, several people did not even dare to breathe loudly, because this meant that Diwu Qingro was deep in thought. King of Hell Chu, ha? Diwu Qingro smiled faintly and said slowly, "This King of Hell Chu cannot be underestimated?" This sentence seemed to be a question, but it also seemed like he was talking to himself. Everyone present could not understand Diwu Qingro's meaning. They looked at each other and chose to be cautious and not speak. "This King of Hell Chu took office and found so many of our people. Can you see how he found them?" Diwu Qingro said slowly. "How?" Everyone was stunned. The identities of these spies were carefully planned and arranged by Golden Horse Riders Department. No matter how one looked at it, they felt that there were no loopholes. Now that they thought about it, they really could not think of where the problem was. "The problem is not on our side, but on that King of Hell Chu," Diwu Qingro said in a low voice. He used a completely opposite perspective to reason. He first assumed that each person was a spy. Then, he found the problem from this aspect. That way it would be much easier. When dealing with officials, this person would find the normal aspects and benefits. In other words, if an official is honest, self-disciplined, and diligent, he would find fault with such people. Diwu Qingro sighed. This King of Hell Chu is not simple. Chapter 106. My lord, I don't quite understand what you mean. The person who spoke was one of the people present. As for the other 5 people, they seem to have understood something. Generally speaking, this kind of official should be promoted and rewarded. But this King of Hell Chu has grasped this point. Not only does he know this, but we also know it. Therefore, the spies we arrange are all capable, loyal, and not greedy. Then we create momentum for them so that they can climb to a high position and create the greatest benefits for us. The one who explained was not Diwu Qingro, but the person sitting next to him. To be a spy, you must first work for the other party and gain their trust and position. Only then can you play the greatest role at a critical moment. We think this way and do this, but this King of Hell Chu also thinks this way. That is why our people in Iron Cloud suffered such heavy losses. Another person said solemnly. This person's face looked as if it was carved out by a knife. He was as thin as a bamboo pole. Even if he was sitting, he would still be a bamboo pole. But if our people do not do this, how can they get promoted in Iron Cloud? The man with the rough face from before said anxiously, "Isn't this cutting off?" "Not necessarily." Another man with a goatee smiled faintly. "Even if he can find out, he will not find out everything. There are some people that even if he suspects, he will not dare to make a move." He may not dare to make a move. The one who spoke was Diwu Qingro. This ambitious and ruthless character had a worried look on his face at this moment. He pondered and said in a low voice, "This King of Hell Chu made a move at Butian Pavilion once, and a spy came out. This time he made a move in Iron Cloud's officialdom with a clear goal. He is ruthless and merciless. He will not let go of any clues. This person is the biggest threat to the people of Iron Cloud." Moreover, this King of Hell Chu made a famous remark when he was purging Butian Pavilion of Iron Cloud. Diwu Qingro's face revealed a look of appreciation. "I do not need evidence. I only need suspicion to kill." This person is decisive and cruel. Furthermore, he doesn't follow the conventional way of doing things. He often takes the unconventional path, and is not to be underestimated. Diwu Qingru gave the final word. The potential danger of this person is not necessarily below that of Tai Butian. Diwu Qingro suddenly turned around with his back facing everyone. Then, he said in a heavy voice, "I ordered people to prepare the invisible falcon as soon as I received this news. Then I sent a message to number 1. I told him to withdraw without any hesitation if he finds that something is wrong." Ah! Everyone was stunned. Could it really be that serious? They had tried their best to think about the severity of the situation. But they hadn't thought that Diwu Qingro would make such a serious response. In addition, the Golden Horse Riders Department will dispatch a king-level master to Iron Cloud along with several experts. If number 1 was fine, then he would kill Chu Yang and come back. If number 1 was in danger, then he would kill Chu Yang and bring number 1 back. Order the Black Horse Cavalry and Iron Horse Cavalry in Iron Cloud to cooperate fully. This plan is called Slaughtering the Sun. Wuxia issued a series of orders without any hesitation. His eyes flashed with killing intent. Tai Butian, do you think that you can grow wings just because this King of Hell Chu is helping you? Watch me cripple this King of Hell first. Prime Minister, we spent 13 years and a lot of resources to achieve this. Are we just going to give up like this? The old man with the goatee was somewhat unwilling. I hope I am overthinking. Wuxia's face was gloomy as he said, but now is not the time for you to question me. Immediately do as I say. At the same time, the 5 armies of the north will advance 50 kilometers. 50 kilometers? Everyone was stunned. Does the Prime Minister want to start a war? 50 kilometers is the territory of Iron Cloud. Although there are no villages or towns there, Iron Cloud soldiers can't bear it. Do as I say. Wuxia's eyes were heavy. He slowly closed his eyes and said in his heart, I hope it is not too late. Then, he suddenly opened his eyes and said hurriedly, no matter who goes, don't touch Tai Butian. Everyone retreated one after another. Wuxia turned around. There was a look of deep contemplation in his eyes. A bright light flickered in his eyes. He revealed an expectant look as he muttered, if you are an opponent, then I will make my move. Let's see if you can take it or not. Then he gently shook his head and smiled. His eyes looked out the window and into the blue sky. That was the direction of Iron Cloud. Wuxia looked like he was lost in thought. After a long time he said, give me the information on the situation of Beyond the Heavens sect. A white bird suddenly soared from Wuxia's Prime Minister's manor. It was palm-sized, but its speed was incomparably fast. It circled in the sky, and then disappeared into the blue sky without leaving a trace. Invisible Falcon. It was a strange object of the Chongtian continent. It could change color with the change of day and night. Its feathers also changed color and disappeared into the blue sky. It was the highest level communication object. Moreover, its flying speed was 3 times faster than an eagle's. Moreover, it had great endurance. It could fly day and night without eating or drinking. With the speed of this invisible falcon, it only needed 1 day and half a night to fly from Great Zhao's capital to Iron Cloud Citadel. Half an hour later, 3 black horses galloped out of the northern gate of Great Zhao's capital city. The 3 horsemen whipped their horses, and the sound of their hooves was like thunder. In the blink of an eye, only a wisp of smoke and dust could be seen from the city gate. How many horses could there be in the entire continent? Yet, they were used as tools for short-distance sprints. They galloped without any regard for horsepower. Their destination? Iron Cloud Citadel. At this moment, Chu Yang, the Dark Knight Challenger, had just finished a fight. He came out of Meteor Martial Club and found a place to restore his appearance. He made the infamous Dark Knight Challenger of Iron Cloud Citadel disappear. Then he walked out onto the street. His heart was filled with regret. If the owner of the Meteor Martial Club had a higher level of attainment in his meteor force, he would be able to integrate the gentle force of water into the layered Heaven Divine technique under his pressure. Now he had reached the critical point. Chu Yang could feel that the breakthrough was close at hand, but there was still a thin line missing. There was only the thickness of a piece of paper left, but he still could not break through. This kind of feeling was extremely depressing. With this kind of subtle understanding of martial power, if the opponent's martial power was much higher than his, it would not do. He needed to maintain a certain amount of pressure, but it could not be too high. Otherwise, he would not be able to feel it. He also needed a kind of murderous aura to achieve this kind of pressure. But when he was sparring with his own people, he obviously would not have this kind of murderous aura. Murderous aura came from the heart. If there was no murderous intent in the heart, then there would be no murderous aura. This was where Chu Yang was helpless. Fortunately, his current cultivation level was not high. It was still possible to find an opponent who was on par with him. If he really reached the peak and encountered this kind of bottleneck, it would be extremely difficult. The loneliness of being at the peak. Chu Yang now understood a little bit. It was hard to find an opponent. Without pressure, there would be no breakthrough. But to feel pressure, one had to be able to keep one's life. It was no wonder that the peak masters were so depressed. The conditions for such an opponent were too harsh. If it was a simple life and death battle, then it would be much easier. But to be able to achieve this kind of understanding while facing an opponent, it was just a dream. At the true peak, even a life and death feud could not be found. Where could he find such an opponent? Thinking about this, Chu Yang slowly walked out of the main street. Seeing that it was still early, he decided to go to Emerald Flow Lake to take a look. Turning around, he walked in the direction of Emerald Flow Lake. Thinking about Emerald Flow Lake, he could not help but think of Gu Duxing. It had been more than 20 days. That guy should be back by now, right? Chapter 107. As Chu Yang thought about this, he could not help but smile. This third grade was not something that could be casually raised. First, the elixirs that he had taken from the people's houses were very useful after being purified by the Calamity Sword. Second, in these 20 days, he had fought 40 to 50 times. His body was sore all over in exchange for this. Chu Yang thought that this kind of training was completely masochistic. He could not hide. It was best to meet force with force. Plus, he could not use any killing moves and he could not use the Calamity Sword. Once he killed someone with one strike, then he would not be able to comprehend anything. But in terms of martial power, he was not as good as the other person. Wasn't this a clear disadvantage? While he was thinking about this, suddenly, an earth-shattering roar came from the direction of the city gate. Where is Du Shiqing? Du Shiqing, come out. This voice was filled with endless panic and sorrow, as well as a trace of panic. But the person who let out the roar was obviously very strong. Chu Yang was shocked and suddenly looked up. Who is this? This person's martial power is very high. Why is he looking for Du Shiqing? This voice was still very far away, but for some reason, Chu Yang suddenly felt an indescribable sense of irritation. It was as if something bad was happening. Chu Yang rushed toward the south gate with a swoosh. He did not know why he was doing this. He only knew that his heart was suddenly very flustered. Why? That voice kept calling for Du Shiqing. The urgency and panic in the voice made it clear that this person's heart was in a mess. He was getting closer and closer. Chu Yang's body was like the wind as he rushed forward. At the city gate, a man in black carried a person on his back and rushed in like a whirlwind. The soldiers guarding the gate did not have time to make a move to stop him. They only saw a blur in front of their eyes. A black whirlwind blew past them and disappeared on the main road into the city. The soldier who moved the fastest suddenly jumped up into the air with his arms and legs flailing. Blood spurted out from his mouth. No one clearly saw how this person made his move. Stop! Several experts and officers who were guarding the south gate leaped up and tried to stop this person. A white silhouette nimbly intercepted him. One black silhouette and the other white silhouette crossed each other like lightning. With two bangs, the white silhouette let out a miserable groan and fell down, spitting out a mouthful of blood. When he landed halfway, the sound of his bones cracking could be heard from his body. However, he was still able to block the black-clothed man for a moment. 7 to 8 figures had already taken advantage of this small gap to block the black-clothed man. The black-clothed man's forward momentum was stopped. His eyes were wild as he furiously shouted, "Get out of the way! Tell Du Shiqing to come see me." Impudent! Du Shiqing was personally welcomed into the imperial city by Tai Bu Tian. Who did not know about this? Right now, Du Shiqing was in the royal palace, treating the Emperor of Iron Cloud. How could he be disturbed? Get out of my way. Blood trickled down from the corners of the black-robed man's mouth. It was obvious that he had suffered internal injuries. However, his imposing manner was still unstoppable. Seeing that the 7 or 8 people in front of him were not giving way, and that there were also ordinary soldiers surrounding him, he could not help but become furious. He fiercely raised his chi and immediately attacked. As soon as he attacked, his energy was like a raging wave. It was unstoppable. The 7 people on the other side exclaimed in unison, "A revered level master?" They did not dare to be negligent and used all of their strength to meet him. The black-clothed man's mouth revealed a trace of ferocity. He roared, "If you don't give way, then all of you can die." His palm contained a huge amount of energy. Even in such a situation, he still firmly supported the person on his back with one hand. On his back, there was a person lying quietly without the slightest movement. A large cloak covered the person's body, making it impossible to see what the person looked like. However, from the shape of the person, one could tell that the person was very thin and weak, like a child. With a loud bang, the 7 people on the other side joined forces to meet this palm. Like a bomb exploding, they were fiercely blown away in all directions. Everyone's face was pale. The opponent obviously did not use his full strength. This feeling of surging potential was very frightening. Your Excellency, do you have a family member who has an urgent illness and is looking for Senior Du? Below, an officer shouted. However, you should know that this is Ironcloud Citadel. Senior Du's status is very high. The more impatient you are, the more you will delay the treatment of your loved ones. Please reconsider. The black-clothed man's entire body shook. With a schwa sound, he jumped down from the sky and grabbed the officer. You know Du Shiqing? Where is he? Take me to him. This matter, I cannot make the decision. Although the officer's chest was grabbed, he wasn't afraid at all. He proudly said, Your Excellency, even if your martial arts are high, but if you want to see Mr. Du, you can't just rely on your martial arts. You have guts. The black-clothed man slowly let go of his right hand. His bloodshot eyes shine like a hungry wolf, but his voice was calm again. What is the fastest way to see Du Shiqing? Even though the officer was quick-witted and stopped the black-clothed man, Du Shiqing was in the royal palace. How could a small guard like him know how to see him? His face could not help but show a troubled expression. The black-clothed man gritted his teeth and said angrily, You lied to me. He raised his hand and wanted to kill the officer. The surrounding soldiers shouted as they unsheathed their swords and spears. The entire southern city gate was illuminated by the reflection of their weapons. The black-clothed man did not hesitate and shouted, If you delay this important matter, even the lives of your entire Ironcloud Citadel are not out of the question. Do you really care about killing a few people? Without even blinking, his hand came down with a schwa sound. Stop! A black shadow flew over. Before the person arrived, he was already shouting in the air, If you want to see Du Shiqing, you need to tell me. When the black-clothed man heard this, his hand that was about to come down suddenly stopped. A moment ago, the violent energy was surging out unstoppably, but in the next moment it was gone. The black shadow that came was Chu Yang. Seeing this skill, his heart was shocked. Release and release at will, a king-level master. The black-clothed man raised his head and looked at the black-clothed Chu Yang. Take off your mask. I do not like people who hide their heads and tails. I do not trust them. Do you want to see Du Shiqing? Or do you want me to take off my mask? Chu Yang snorted. If I could take it off, why would I put it on? The black-clothed man snorted and looked at Chu Yang with his eagle-like eyes. You know where Du Shiqing is? Of course. However, unless it is absolutely necessary, no one is allowed to disturb Senior Du, Chu Yang said. I need to know if your friend is injured or sick. Is there a need for Senior Du to personally come and see him? The black-clothed man glared at Chu Yang as if he wanted to eat him alive. If it is a minor injury or illness, there are many medical centers in the city. Chu Yang was indifferent to the black-clothed man's glare and said calmly. In fact, he was getting more and more excited. He could feel that this black-clothed man had some kind of connection with him. Otherwise, his powerful spiritual sense would not have been so flustered today. Everyone get out of the way, it is all right. Chu Yang shouted to the people around him. At the same time, his right hand flashed and a token appeared in his palm. On it, the 2 words Butian were clearly written in front of everyone's eyes. Butian Pavilion's people. The surrounding officers immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. They hurriedly waved their hands, Get out of the way, get out of the way. Immediately, the surrounding soldiers dispersed. Several officers wiped their foreheads, their hearts still palpitating with fear. When they saw this guy's face covered, they were also a bit unhappy. They also wanted to take him down and take him down. But at this moment they only felt lucky. So it was King of Hell Chu's people. Luckily, we did not provoke him. The black-clothed man's gaze softened a bit. He gently carried the cloaked person in front of him. His movements were very careful. This kind of movement did not startle the person at all. He gently took off the cloak and said, It is an injury, but it is also an illness. If an ordinary doctor could treat it, I would not have come all the way to Ironcloud Citadel. Even Du Shiqing. As he said this, he sighed softly. But Chu Yang could no longer hear what he was saying. The moment the cloak was taken off, Chu Yang felt a rush of blood. He saw stars in front of his eyes. At this moment he almost fainted. No wonder his spiritual sense was so abnormal. It was because Chu Yang's heart was in pain, it was violently churning. At this moment his eyes were suddenly covered with tears. He looked at this injured person, and his body suddenly shook violently. It was as if he used all of his spiritual energy to painfully groan. His voice trembled as if he was in a dream. Qing Wu. The public's last chapter will be on the shelves in a few hours. Feng Ling is a writer. He relies on subscriptions for a living. I hope everyone can be generous and subscribe to support him. Thank you so much. At midnight, have you all prepared your monthly tickets? Chapter 108. It was as if time had suddenly flowed backwards. The surrounding people were gone, the city walls were gone, even heaven and earth were gone. In Chu Yang's eyes, there was only this delicate little face left. Chingu, you have finally appeared. You have finally appeared. In this life I will dance for you. In this life I will dance for you. My heart will not change even if I die 10,000 times. Qinggu, who am I doing this for? For you. For you. Curved eyebrows, a small pink face, a pale face. Her originally lively big eyes were tightly shut, and her face was full of pain. Her lips were tightly pursed, and there was a narrow wound on her chest. Around the wound, even her snow-white clothes had turned black. Black demon. Chu Yang's pupils shrank, and he shouted angrily. This was the unique scar of the Black Demon clan. At this moment, Chu Yang suddenly understood some doubts that he did not understand in his previous life. There was a scar on Emo Qingwu's chest, and it was this scar that completely obstructed Emo Qingwu's martial path. Restricted by this scar, Emo Qingwu's highest achievement in life could only stop at martial great master. She was obviously a talented genius, but because of this reason, she could not take a step forward after reaching martial great master. Because after martial great master was revered martial great master, and the cultivation of revered martial great master required the tempering of the 5 internal organs. And this wound obviously prevented any possibility of tempering the 5 internal organs. Emo Qinggu once said that she was injured when she was young, and did not receive timely treatment, leaving behind internal injuries. After returning home, the internal injury had already formed, and could not be changed. When Emo Qinggu talked about this, there was a faint loneliness and unwillingness in her expression. She also mentioned that at that time, there was once an uncle who loved her the most, who died because of her injury, and because of this injury, Emo Qinggu was ambushed, unable to break out of the encirclement, and died. Who are you? How do you know our miss? The black-clothed man looked at Chu Yang suspiciously. This black-clothed masked man was full of mystery. The moment he saw the miss, his eyes were dazed as if he was in a dream, but there was also a burst of light. When he saw the young miss's injuries, the anger in his eyes was as if he wanted to burn everything. That pained look on his face was as if his own heart was being hammered into pieces by someone. That was an extremely deep heartache. When the black-robed man saw this gaze, he felt completely relieved. With this kind of gaze, even if he would rather be injured 10,000 times, he would not let the young miss be hurt in the slightest. As soon as he relaxed, the black-clothed man, who was already seriously injured, immediately swayed. He tried his best to keep his hands steady as he pushed them forward. I'll leave it to you to save the young lady. Chu Yang hurriedly stretched out his hand and caught this petite body. His heart started to beat violently again. Seeing Chu Yang take over Emo Qinggu, the black-clothed man's heart lightened and he almost fell to the ground. His face was full of fatigue. He wanted to walk, but he couldn't move his legs. What happened to you? Chu Yang's heart was burning with anxiety. He wanted to carry Emo Qingwu to do Shurqing. Seeing the black-robed man in such a state, how could he just leave? The young miss's injury. I used my energy to keep her alive the whole way. The black-clothed man smiled weakly. Chu Yang suddenly realized. He was already injured, and he used his precious energy to keep Emo Qingwu alive. Plus, he had to maintain his speed to reach Ironcloud Citadel as soon as possible to find Du Shurqing. If it wasn't for his willpower, he probably wouldn't have been able to hold on. Chu Yang picked up Emo Qingwu with one hand and grabbed the black-clothed man's arm with the other. He turned his head and shouted, "Find me a carriage quickly. You go first. The young miss won't be able to hold on for long." "I'm fine." The black-clothed man shook his head weakly. He used all his strength to break free from Chu Yang's arm and pushed him. "Go quickly." Chu Yang's heart felt warm. This black-clothed man obviously did not care about himself for Emo Qingwu's sake. But Emo Qingwu's life was at stake. There was no time to waste. Chu Yang's heart hardened. He fiercely transferred his energy into the black-clothed man's body. After one cycle he said, "Someone come, take this elder to Butian Pavilion. Find Wu Qian." Then he nodded and flew out with Emo Qingwu in his arms. The gate guard was startled. Wu Qian? Could it be the Rakshasa girl by King of Hell Chu's side? Chapter 109. Looking at Chu Yang's serious expression, Tai Butian was a bit startled. She remembered Chu Yang's words. "She is my life." But now it seemed that this was not his life. In his heart, this little girl was clearly more important than his own life. Who is this little girl? Is she his little sister? Naturally, Tai Butian would never suspect that Chu Yang had any romantic feelings for such a pretty little girl. This little girl was only about 10 years old. How could it be possible? She watched as Chu Yang drank the medicine in big mouthfuls, and then held it in his mouth for a while to let the temperature of the medicine drop a little. Then he carefully passed the medicine over. That patience, that care that came from his soul. Tai Butian suddenly felt her heart thumping heavily. She could not help but turn her head away. When the bowl of medicine was finally finished, Chu Yang stood up and asked, "Senior Du, how many more times do I have to take this medicine?" "For today's medicine, taking it once is enough. After this bowl of medicine, you can massage her blood to let the medicine spread faster. I estimate that she will wake up in the evening." Du Shiqing looked up at the sky. It was already afternoon. "At that time I will prepare some medicine for her to take. In 7 or 8 days she will be able to walk without any danger to her life. Her internal injuries can also be healed, but the injuries to her 3-yin meridian, I can't do anything about it." Du Shiqing looked up at Chu Yang. "This kind of internal injury is absolutely incurable in the world. You don't need to waste any more effort." Du Shiqing clearly saw through Chu Yang's thoughts. If he did not say this, Chu Yang would definitely go to the ends of the earth to seek medical help for this little girl. Chu Yang would do such a thing. Chu Yang's love for this little girl had obviously reached the point where he did not care about anything else. This point anyone could see. Du Shiqing might not be a big deal in other aspects, but his medical skills would be an authority even in upper 3 heavens. His words meant that Emo Qingwu's internal injury could not be cured. Of course, Chu Yang knew this, and he also understood the meaning behind Du Shiqing's words. It was not easy for him to get to this point. He must not waste his life for a hopeless illness. Even those legendary heavenly treasures won't work? Chu Yang asked in despair. "Perhaps you do not know what kind of poison this is, but I can say with certainty that this is the legendary Heimo's poison. If it was not injected into the 3-yin meridian with my medical skills, it would not be difficult to completely cure it. But once she enters the 3-yin meridian, even the deities will be helpless." Du Shiqing solemnly said, "Even if all the legendary medicines in the world were gathered together, they would still not be able to cure it." Du Shiqing paused, looked at Chu Yang and said softly, "Chu Yang, the only thing I can do is to try my best to suppress her injuries after she wakes up. Suppress it to the point where it will not affect her life. Even if she marries later, she will be fine. If he was lucky, he could still live a long life. You'll just stop at the martial Dao. As a woman, this is the same as a normal person," Du Shiqing said sincerely. Chu Yang heaved a long sigh and lowered his head. "Even if you gather all the great medicines together, you still won't be able to cure it." These words had given Chu Yang a huge blow. It also made the hope in his heart disappear. For other women it might be the same, but for Emo Qingwu it was definitely not the same. In the previous life, if it were not for this damned illness, how could Emo Qingwu have been ambushed and killed? Emo Qingwu had never mentioned her family background, but Chu Yang knew that Emo Qingwu definitely came from a powerful aristocratic family. That kind of elegance and nobility in her bones was definitely not something that could be cultivated by a small family. But in the previous life, Emo Qingwu would rather wander the martial world than go home. Why? Perhaps it was related to this injury. Maybe it was because Emo Qingwu did not want to go back. Then it could be because the family treated Emo Qingwu unfairly. Or she was expelled from the family. And a girl with the 3-yin meridian was a genius of every family. A treasure. How could they be willing to expel her? If she was really expelled, it would be because her 3-yin meridian was destroyed. In other words, it was because of today's incident. The injury this time had really caused Emo Qingwu's life tragedy in her previous life. If it were not for this injury, she would not have left the family, and she would not have met Chu Yang, and she would not have been ambushed and killed. So Chu Yang was not reconciled. He was not reconciled to let Emo Qingwu really bear this injury that could not be healed for the rest of her life. Even if he could protect her, he could not be by her side all the time. Emo Qingwu must have the power to protect herself. Only then could Chu Yang be at ease. Chu Yang, who is this little girl to you? It was only now that Tai Butian asked this question. With Tai Butian's composure, it was already very rare for her to ask such a curious question. However, Tai Butian's words jolted Chu Yang out of his deep thoughts. She's my... Chu Yang just opened his mouth and suddenly grimaced. Pei. Mr. Du, what kind of medicine is this? Why is it so bitter? Chu Yang felt that his mouth had directly turned into a goldfish. This kind of bitterness was really bitter to the extreme. Chu Yang grimaced in pain, so bitter that he rolled his eyes. You didn't feel the bitterness just now? Tai Butian and Du Shiqing were both stunned. Chu Yang was also startled. Just now, he was wholeheartedly thinking about Emo Qingwu. When he saw that she couldn't drink the medicine, he did it without thinking. He did it naturally and didn't consider whether the medicine was bitter or not. Now that he was reminded, while Chu Yang felt the bitterness, he also remembered Emo Qingwu's poem. A lifetime of not dancing, a dance is a lifetime of bitterness. In this life I dance for you, even if I have to dance a lifetime of bitterness, bitter. Chu Yang could not help but grimace. Was it bitter? This kind of bitterness, compared to the bitterness in Emo Qingwu's heart in the previous life, was it still bitter? I'm afraid it was not even 1 in 10,000, right? You are really... Du Shiqing admired Chu Yang more and more. Chu Yang was indeed a person who valued friendship and righteousness. This old man did not misjudge him. In order to save someone, he actually completely ignored his own feelings. This was a kind of selfless spirit. But Tai Butian had a different thought. It seems that this little girl is really Chu Yang's biggest weakness. Once the enemy knows, there will be no end of trouble. This news must be kept secret. It's just that I don't know the origin of this little girl. Senior Du, regarding the matter of saving this little girl today, I hope that no one will know about it. Tai Butian said with a smile. Du Shiqing was startled, but he immediately understood and said, Don't worry, no one will know about this matter. Looking at Emo Qingwu's little face slowly turning red, and her breathing also gradually slowing down, as if she had gone from being unconscious to being in a deep sleep, Chu Yang also slowly relaxed. With this happiness, he did not feel the bitterness in his mouth anymore. Instead, he began to look at this legendary royal palace with interest. This is the royal palace? It's really rich and luxurious. Chu Yang looked and commented with great interest, It just feels a bit deserted. Deserted is inevitable. Tai Butian sighed and said, For the convenience of doing things, I don't often stay in the royal palace. Besides, the maids in the royal palace, other than those who are left to take care of father and maintain the daily cleanliness of the royal palace, I have sent the rest out of the palace. Right now there are many things to do in Iron Cloud. If I still have to maintain the daily necessities of the royal palace, it will not be a small expense. Chu Yang let out an "oh" sound and asked, Then what about your little sister? Is there no one to take care of her? Chu Yang clearly remembered that day at Heavenly Armament Pavilion. The young girl called Tai Long Chung second uncle. Calling someone second uncle might be normal in a normal family, but when it came to Tai Long Chung it was very unusual. Before coming to Iron Cloud, Chu Yang did not know about the members of Iron Cloud's royal family. But after entering Butian Pavilion, he knew that the only direct relatives of the previous royal family were the Emperor and Tai Long Chung. Then that young girl must be Tai Butian's little sister without a doubt. My little sister? Tai Butian seemed to be a bit surprised. Her eyes flashed with a complicated look. Then she smiled and said, "You are talking about that mischievous little girl. Why, have you seen her?" "Yes, she went to Heavenly Armament Pavilion." Chu Yang nodded. "That little girl is really a headache." Tai Butian smiled and said, "But she is also very cute." Minister Chu suddenly mentioning her. Haha, could it be that Minister Chu has some feelings for my little sister? Without waiting for Chu Yang to speak, Tai Butian laughed heartily and said, "Minister Chu is a dragon among men. If you are really interested, I would not mind being a matchmaker for you." Chu Yang laughed. He also knew that Tai Butian was joking. He said, "I am just a commoner. How could I be worthy of the princess? I am just curious. Your Highness in Iron Cloud seems to be very mysterious." Tai Butian's eyes flashed. Then she sighed and said, "My little sister's existence is a secret. In the past, Great Zhao constantly sent assassins to assassinate our royal family members. In order to protect my little sister after she was born, I did not announce it. Then my father was injured, so I did not dare to announce it. If someone knew and something happened, then wouldn't I, as her elder brother, have wronged her?" Tai Butian sighed and said, "As a girl, being born in a royal family is a misfortune. Being born in a royal family in a time of war is even more tragic. Unfortunately, this royal family is very small in number and has suffered many disasters. I only hope that my little sister can live a peaceful and ordinary life. Concealing her news is also a precaution. If one day Iron Cloud is defeated, she can still keep her life. Even if she has to hide her identity, she can still live." After saying this, he sighed heavily again. His heart was obviously very touched. Chu Yang was silent for a long time. He faintly felt that Tai Butian's words were somewhat evasive, but he still said, "Yes, being born in a royal family, of course you can enjoy the luxurious life that ordinary people can't even dream of. But the pressure you have to bear is so heavy that it can kill. Fortunately, your little sister has such a good brother like you. This is also her good fortune." Du Shiqing also let out a sigh. The daughters of royal families have always been tools for governing the country and diplomacy. The end result is usually a marriage alliance. And they never care about whether the princess herself likes it or not. They only care about the interests of the whole country. Chapter 110. Let's not talk about this anymore. What do you plan to do with this little girl? Tai Butian winked at Chu Yang. We'll talk about it after we leave the palace. Chu Yang bowed to Du Shiqing and said, Senior Du, thank you. I owe you another favor. Chu Yang's words were very vague. Oh, a favor. It seemed like a very normal sentence, but even Du Shiqing did not know that this time. Chu Yang had saved him a chance of redemption when he was beyond redemption. Chu Yang had a clear conscience. Du Shiqing had saved Mo Qingwu once, so Chu Yang would definitely remember it. Moreover, Du Shiqing was also an elder that he respected. Du Shiqing chuckled and waved his hand, not caring at all. After bidding farewell to the imperial palace, Tai Butian looked at Chu Yang, who was carrying this little girl as if she was a treasure. Tai Butian couldn't help but frown. Minister Chu, even though you might not feel comfortable with me telling you this, I still have to remind you that this little girl is very likely to become your weakness. Chu Yang frowned and looked up at Tai Butian. He asked gloomily, What do you mean? You really like this little girl. I can see this. But if this kind of love is revealed to the outside world and is discovered by Di Wuqing Ro, Tai Butian said lightly, I'm afraid your love for her will harm her instead. Brother Chu, be careful. That's right. Chu Yang was shocked. He suddenly thought of this point. With his current identity as a mortal enemy of Di Wuqing Ro, the unscrupulous Di Wuqing Ro might really do this. He could not help but look deeply at Tai Butian. Thank you for the reminder. However, the guilt and longing for Mo Qingwu in 2 lifetimes, even if Chu Yang was heartless, seeing his biggest motivation and biggest concern in this life, how could he not love her? Chu Yang sat in Tai Butian's carriage frowning. Looking at Mo Qingwu in his arms, his heart was filled with gratitude. Finally, the two of them were together again. Even though Mo Qingwu is still a little girl, it's okay, I can wait. I can wait. The carriage stopped at a hidden corner. Chu Yang jumped out with Mo Qingwu in his arms. His body flashed a few times and disappeared from Tai Butian's sight. Tai Butian couldn't help but sigh softly as she watched Chu Yang leave with the little girl in his arms. Tai Butian didn't ask who that girl was. Because Chu Yang didn't say anything as a partner, Tai Butian would never ask about things that her partner wasn't willing to talk about. This was a form of trust. However, Tai Butian could clearly sense that Chu Yang still loved this little girl wholeheartedly, and didn't make any changes because of her words. Or rather, he wanted to change, but he couldn't. Tai Butian sighed softly and murmured, "So you're not a heartless person after all. I wish you good luck." She turned around and said softly, "Let's go." The carriage rumbled and started moving again. In Tai Butian's heart, even though Chu Yang would sometimes display the mentality and actions of a young man, those were all jokes that he would make when it was harmless. But when it came to doing things, Chu Yang became a precise calculation machine. Absolutely emotionless, without any emotional fluctuations. Everything was for the sake of the final goal. For Chu Yang, massacres were even more common and tasteless than eating cabbage. He had always thought of Chu Yang as a heartless leader, an absolute decision-maker. He didn't care about anything. He didn't care about power, wealth, or the lives of others. When he went crazy, he didn't even care about his own life. However, Mo Qingwu's appearance today made Tai Butian see Chu Yang's deep feelings and persistence. He didn't know if this was a good thing for Chu Yang, but he couldn't help but feel a kind of happiness. It was a kind of happiness for a friend. After today, she felt that Chu Yang wasn't a machine. Instead, he was a living person with flesh, blood, and feelings. Chu Yang went all the way back to Butian Pavilion, then entered through a secret passage and returned to his room. Wu Qianqian was inside, wearing a ferocious mask and a black robe. They were also shocked to see that Chu Yang had suddenly returned with an unconscious little girl. But seeing Chu Yang's expression, she still chose not to ask. "Where is the person who came this afternoon?" Chu Yang asked. "Unconscious," Wu Qianqian also said lightly. "His injuries are very serious." "Good, as long as he's not dead." Chu Yang quickly said, "Prepare a carriage. After dark, I will take them to Emerald Flow Lake." Right now, Emerald Flow Lake's construction had been completed. It was completely habitable. Wu Qianqian nodded and said, "His Highness said that Tang Xianshang's matter should be dealt with according to your methods. There is no need to go through him." Chu Yang let out an "oh" sound and said indifferently, "I know. Inform Heavenly Secret Hall that the investigation of Tang Xianshang is over. Also, tell Fierce Blood Hall to send people tonight to capture Tang Xianshang. Remember, use a thief or some other identity. It doesn't matter if it succeeds or not, but if anyone reveals their identity and Butian Pavilion's identity, kill without mercy and exterminate their entire family." Wu Qianqian's whole body shook. She suddenly raised her head and said, "You are too bold?" "Bold?" Chu Yang frowned and said softly, "I'm even worried that tonight is too late." Chu Yang was a bit regretful. He should have read all the information first before capturing Tang Xianshang. But now that he had already dealt with so many officials, Tang Xianshang would definitely be on guard. Tang Xianshang was a spy. Yet he was able to do all this in Ironcloud Nation. His intelligence was definitely top-notch. He would definitely feel that he was in danger. Therefore, Chu Yang did not have high hopes for Fierce Blood Hall's operation tonight. What he needed to consider now was what to do next if he could not capture Tang Xianshang. Whether he could capture Tang Xianshang or not, the next step was the most important. Chu Yang originally wanted to do it himself, but Mo Qingwu's appearance made him give up on this idea. Mo Qingwu was unconscious, and Chu Yang wanted to accompany her. The affairs of the world were important, but compared to Mo Qingwu, they were nothing. The affairs of the world were important, but they were not my wife. Emerald Flow Lake. Chu Yang carefully placed Mo Qingwu on his bed. He sat in front of the bed with his chin propped up and looked at her in a daze. "I worked hard, I fought hard. I would rather go against the heavens. I would rather go against fate. I would rather be beyond redemption. All for the sake of reuniting with you in this life. All for the sake of making it up to you. I want to love you. Qingwu. Originally, we were supposed to meet 10 years later, but this time we met ahead of time." Looking at the young face on the bed, Chu Yang sighed softly. His heart suddenly felt bitter, then sweet, and then lost. I have grown up, but you are still so young. Qing Wu, when can you become the Mo Qing Wu of the previous life? A dance is a lifetime of suffering. If so, I would rather not see your beautiful singing and dancing for the rest of my life, and let you be happy. A moan came from next door, followed by a rustling sound. Then a burly figure appeared at the door. He asked with a hoarse voice, "How is Miss?" Chu Yang stood up silently and looked at the burly man in black at the door. The burly man in black rushed in quickly. Looking at Mo Qing Wu on the bed, he carefully reached out his finger to check her breathing. His face immediately looked relieved. He sat down on the chair that Chu Yang had just sat on and grinned. "Mrs. Fine, thank the heavens." The burly man in black moved quickly. Although his face was still a little pale, there were no major problems. It seemed that he had recovered well. Chu Yang could not help but sigh. A king-level master's recovery ability was really strong. He raised his head and looked at Chu Yang. His eyes were full of gratitude. He clasped his hands. "Thank you, little brother. Today is all thanks to you. I will repay your kindness in the future. Helping you is not for your future." Chu Yang smiled faintly. "How are you?" "I am fine, just a little weak." The burly man in black's eyes showed a strong hatred. At Lianyun Mountain, I was surrounded by He Mo's subordinates. I did not expect that He Mo's 2 kings were also there. In a moment of carelessness, I was hit by 2 punches. But it is not a big deal. It is just that Miss is worrying. Lianyun Mountain. Chu Yang was a little shocked. Lianyun Mountain was 700 miles away. He was attacked by He Mo and had serious internal injuries, but he still traveled 700 miles in one day to reach Iron Cloud Citadel. This was not even counting the time he spent on the road. One must know that no one would tell him that Du Shiqing was in Iron Cloud Citadel. He had to ask around to find out. This person's tenacity was really strong. "Little brother, which clan are you from? Why do you look so unfamiliar to me?" The burly man in black took a deep breath. He picked up Chu Yang's teacup and drank it in one gulp. He wiped his mouth and asked, "What do you mean by which clan?" Chu Yang frowned. "Which clan are you from in Santian?" The burly man in black opened his eyes wide. "I am not from Santian." Chu Yang smiled helplessly. "Then how do you know my miss? You know her name? And He Mo?" The burly man in black glared. Even though it was a normal question, his appearance was a little rough. When he glared, even the beard on his cheeks almost exploded. Chu Yang felt that this question was a little difficult to answer. Could it be that the person who was reborn was your miss-husband? If he said that, Chu Yang could guarantee that his savior would immediately be punched full. It is a long story. Chu Yang sighed deeply. Then he changed the topic and asked, "Why are you here?" The burly man in black looked at Chu Yang's expression and showed an understanding smile. He grinned and said, Oh, so that's how it is. I understand, haha. In that case, I won't ask." Chu Yang was stunned. "What do you understand? What do you mean by in that case? So that's how it is? Why do I not understand? I am a child without a mother. It is a long story." The burly man in black sighed heavily. "It is a long story. Do you have wine?" Chu Yang was once again stunned. This man's thought process was really unpredictable. One moment he was sighing and the next moment he was asking for wine. Plus, he was seriously injured. As if he saw Chu Yang's worry, the burly man in black patted his chest. "No problem. If you have wine, just give it to me. No matter how serious the injury is, I still need to drink. I need to drink to drown my sorrows." Chapter 111. After downing 3 full bowls of wine, the black-clothed man exhaled a mouthful of wine and said, "This is really satisfying. Speaking of which, it's so fucking depressing. Originally, the world was peaceful and everything was fine. Suddenly, one day, the Calamity Sword reappeared." Calamity Sword. Chu Yang's heart beat violently. At this moment, his heart almost jumped out of his chest. Only he knew about the appearance of the Calamity Sword. Why did it seem like the whole world knew about it? When calamity appears, the wind and clouds dance. When calamity is destroyed, the stars cry. When heaven and earth changes, the fate of the world changes. This is a saying that has been passed down in the heaven-level continent for 10,000 years. It's also a prophecy left by the supreme martial artist Chun Lun 10,000 years ago. When the man in black said the 3 words Chan Lu Yun, the respect on his face was so thick that it couldn't be dispersed. Supreme martial artist Chan Lu Yun was also one of the only 2 supreme martial artists in the history of the heaven-level continent. In this world, there were no supreme martial artists originally. However, after these 2 people broke through the last barrier, there were supreme martial artists. The morning breeze in the universe, the clouds outside the sky. Supreme martial artist Chan Lu Yun. Supreme martial artist Chan Lu Yun. The eternal legends of the heaven-level continent. Chu Yang naturally knew about Chan Lu Yun. However, he didn't know that Chan Lu Yun had left such a prophecy. This sentence means that once the Calamity Sword finds its true master, heaven and earth will definitely change greatly. The entire structure of the heaven-level continent will also change. Therefore, once the Calamity Sword appears, all the descendants of the big clans must experience the martial world and wait for the calamity. Legend has it that the calamity of the Calamity Sword is to rule the big clans of the heaven-level continent. To face the calamity, only after this turmoil, the big clans will be ranked again to determine the strong and the weak. They will decide the ownership of the upper 3 heavens and the lower 3 heavens. Only then will it come to an end. The man in black took another sip of wine and said, "And the master of the Calamity Sword is the most important person." Chu Yang opened his mouth like a dying catfish. With his composure, he actually didn't know what to say at this moment. "Are you shocked?" The black-clothed man proudly shook the wine jar. He was very satisfied with Chu Yang's expression. This matter was no longer a secret in the aristocratic families of the 3 heavens. He didn't expect that when he spoke of it, this fellow would be so shocked. This caused the black-clothed man's heart to fill with a sense of accomplishment. Shocking. This is too shocking. Chu Yang nodded repeatedly like a chicken pecking rice. He thought, "I'm not just shocked. I'm shocked to the point of turning the world upside down. Tribulation Sword Master? Isn't that referring to me? Could it be that I have such an ability?" Even the upper 3 heavens and the upper 3 heavens were shaken by a mere martial warrior? Speaking of which, this is not a good thing. Motherfucker. The black-clothed man's face was suddenly filled with anger. The birth of the Calamity Sword is not a big deal, but it is related to the ranking of the big clans. Therefore, the young disciples of the various aristocratic families had one requirement when they came out for training, and that was to suppress the disciples of the other aristocratic families. If he couldn't suppress it, he could just kill it. In any case, we have to do everything we can to weaken them. Chu Yang held his forehead and secretly rolled his eyes. And the mortal enemies of our Mo clan are the He Mo clan and the Yin clan. Although they seem to be at peace on the surface for hundreds of years, they are constantly fighting in the dark. This time, the birth of the Calamity Sword has exposed the conflict between the 3 big clans. Especially the younger generation, it is a life and death situation. The black-clothed man sighed. This time, the 2 young masters came out to gain experience, and brought 3 guards with them. The young miss made a fuss, and wanted to come out to play. The clan master also felt that with 3 king-level experts protecting her, nothing could go wrong. So he allowed her to come out. "He also sent me to protect the young Mississippi." He sighed and raised his head to drink. He sighed. "I really failed to live up to clan master's great trust. For king-level experts to protect her?" Chu Yang's brain short-circuited. The Mo clan of the 3 heavens? Was it that awesome? And under the protection of 4 king-level experts, Mo Qinggu actually suffered such injuries? Were these 4 king-level masters incompetent? King-level experts are considered top figures in the 3 heavens. But this time, the young disciples are going to train in the martial world. It will decide the survival of the entire clan for hundreds or thousands of years from now. Compared to this, what are king-level experts? The black-clothed man looked disdainful. He completely forgot that he was also a king-level expert. "I see." Chu Yang's face became serious. He had heard Gu Duxing talk about the 3 heavens clan training in the martial world, but he didn't expect it to be so grand and far-reaching now. It seemed that he had to reevaluate some things. After coming out, the eldest young master and the second young master had a conflict. They quarreled for an entire afternoon and parted on bad terms. The eldest young master took his 2 brothers to Great Zhao, and the second young master took Miss to go sightseeing. When they arrived at the Lianyun Mountains, there were rumors that there were ruins under the cliff. After the second young master saw some things, he suspected that it was the remains of a monarch-level expert. Plus, the place was very desolate, so he wanted to go and take a look. I accompanied Miss to wait on the cliff while the second young master and Mo Lao San went down. Not long after they went down, the whole slanting valley suddenly burst into flames. They were ambushed by the enemy. This is a trap, Chu Yang said with certainty. He couldn't help but despise this second young master. If there were really remains of a monarch-level expert, would you have the chance to come down from the three heavens? Such an obvious trap, and he actually stepped into it with his sister. What a retard. Slap. The black-clothed man slapped his thigh and said with a tone of heroes think alike. Who said it wasn't? It was a trap, Sai. Mo Lao San and I tried to persuade the second young master several times, but he didn't listen. Sai. I carried Miss and escaped from the fire with great difficulty. Then we were surrounded by the Hayamo. Sai, Miss has the 3 meridian. If she grows up, she will become a great expert even if she is a girl. But the Hayamo wanted to kill her because of this. 12 revered martial artists and the saber sword kings attacked at the same time. I almost lost my life there. Even Miss was hit by the Hayamo sword king's sword. Fortunately, she was far away. But she almost... The black-clothed man's face was full of anger. Motherfucker. This debt will be settled sooner or later. However, he didn't notice that ever since he mentioned the words 3 meridians, Chu Yang had suddenly become silent. The Mo clan values Qing Wu's 3 meridian very much? Chu Yang asked cautiously. Of course, the 3 meridian only appears in women. Once it appears, the future of this woman is immeasurable. Even if she becomes an emperor-level expert, it won't be surprising. Moreover, our Mo clan had a great-grandmother who had the 3 meridian. She left behind a set of cultivation methods for the 3 meridian. Miss only needs to follow it step by step, and her path will be smooth and smooth. The black-clothed man said proudly. It could be seen that this man loved and cared for his Miss very much. Moreover, he was very proud of Mo Qing Wu. What if the 3 meridian is destroyed? What will happen? Chu Yang asked in a low voice. What will happen? The 3 meridian will be destroyed. The black-clothed man looked at him in shock. Suddenly, he stood up with a schwa sound. The wine jar in his hand fell to the ground with a bang sound. He stared at Chu Yang. If... Chu Yang said softly. The black-clothed man murmured weakly. He suddenly remembered that Mo Qing Wu had been hit by a sword. That sword was on her chest. And that was where the 3 meridian gathered. He was stunned for a long time. Then he said in a low voice, if Miss life is over. His voice was full of grief and loss. Over? Chu Yang frowned. He faintly revealed a dangerous aura. How is it over? The black-clothed man smiled bitterly and said, in every clan or country, there will always be a lot of good-for-nothings among the daughters of the clan masters. These people are debauches, rude and unreasonable. They don't even know martial arts. They are all the same. They all have their own positions and their own values. Chu Yang nodded silently. And these good-for-nothings are the daughters of the clan masters. The role they play is also very big. Because they are usually used to form alliances through marriage. They are tools to consolidate power. The black-clothed man smiled bitterly. There are many strong forces. Everyone is walking on thin ice. Even if 2 forces want to form an alliance, there must be a legitimate reason. It's not like you can form an alliance just because you want to. Once your power expands too quickly, other forces will join together to attack you. And at this time, if you want to form an alliance, you don't want to be attacked. First, it's a master and a disciple. Second, it's a marriage alliance. Chu Yang quietly helped him continue. And the master and disciple will have the depression of having their clan's unique skills stolen by others. This will lead to hidden dangers. It's far less worth it to form an alliance through marriage with the good-for-nothings of the clan. As for these good-for-nothing brothers, even if they were to be married, they would still be able to bring great contributions to the family. This is where their value lies. Yes, it's like that. The black-clothed man lowered his head and said, the Mo clan also has such descendants. And these people usually don't participate in the ranking of the clan because they don't deserve it. Like the clan master's eldest son, Mo Tianxing, because of his good-for-nothings, he was demoted to a third official at the age of 11. Although he is the eldest, he still has to call his younger brother elder brother. If Miss Threein Meridian is destroyed, then, the black-clothed man suddenly became anxious. He asked loudly, "Little brother, what will happen to Miss? If her Threein Meridian is destroyed, will the clan immediately give up on her? Will she become a tool to form an alliance through marriage?" Chu Yang's eyes were very cold. His voice was also very cold. He didn't care about the anxiety of this king-level master. Chapter 112. With a distressed expression, he continued, "Moreover, young Miss has always been on good terms with the second duke, but she isn't very harmonious with the Grand Duke. The second duke and the Grand Duke, on the other hand, are very competitive. The Grand Duke is very popular in the family, and the majority of the elders also support the Grand Duke. If there are no accidents, the Grand Duke will definitely take over the position of clan master. If young Miss, the consequences are unimaginable." Chu Yang nodded deeply, and the corner of his mouth hooked up into a cold smile. Mo Qingwu didn't stay in her clan in her previous life. It seemed that something had happened because of this. For such a big clan, what kinship was there? Mo Qingwu had always been close to second brother, and her Threein Meridian had unknowingly created power for her second brother. How could the Grand Duke not hold a grudge? Now that something had happened to her, wouldn't the Grand Duke be in the mood? Why would he help his sister? And once he gained power, how could Mo Qingwu have a good life? The third duke of the Mo clan is called Mo Tianxing? Chu Yang raised his eyebrows. This name felt familiar to him. He couldn't help but ask, "Then what is the name of the Grand Duke in the clan now?" When he asked this question, Chu Yang felt that his heart was thumping twice. Mo Tianyun. The man in black exhaled. He is the second son of the clan master. He is now the eldest and the first successor. What about the second duke? Chu Yang asked anxiously. The second duke is Mo Tianji. In the Mo clan, the Grand Duke is brave and good at fighting, and the second duke is resourceful. This is publicly known. Don't you know? The man in black looked at Chu Yang strangely, and didn't understand his reaction. Moreover, since you know Mo Qingwu, why don't you know Mo Tianyun and Mo Tianji? Mo Tianji? Mo Tianji. Chu Yang's whole body shook, and he muttered again, "Tung." Mo Tianji, a lifelong friend of his previous life, the young clan lord of the Mo clan, who had set up a deadly ambush in the upper three heavens and killed him on the spot, was actually Mo Qingwu's brother? He couldn't help but snort and say, "So easy to be schemed against and fall into a trap. How can you be considered resourceful?" Cough cough. The temptation of a monarch-level experts remains. "Little brother, what is your name?" The black-clothed man suddenly slapped his forehead and said, "I am sorry, my name is Mo Qingyu. My name is Chu Yang." Chu Yang was a little absent-minded. He was still immersed in the shock brought by the three words Mo Tianji. Chu Yang had never understood why Mo Tianji wanted to harm him. In his previous life, the two of them had drunk wine and chatted countless times. They had confided in each other countless times, and they had talked through the night. It could be said that Mo Tianji had countless opportunities to kill him, but until then, he had never revealed any of it. In fact, Chu Yang could feel that Mo Tianji sincerely wanted to be friends with him. They also sincerely appreciated each other. In the past 3 days, Mo Tianji had been the one who had helped him resolve the numerous crises he had faced. This was the only reason why Chu Yang didn't understand why Mo Tianji wanted to kill him. Today, he finally knew the answer to the riddle. And it was for his younger sister, Mo Qingwu. Revenge. He remembered the last time the two of them drank together until they were dead drunk. They talked about the impermanence of the world and sighed endlessly. Then, for some reason, they talked about the pain in each other's hearts and the things they regretted the most. Chu Yang's thoughts flashed like lightning. A scene from the past suddenly appeared in his mind. The thing I regret the most is my little sister. My favorite little sister. At that time, Mo Tianji had drunk a lot when he was talking. His face was full of tears. My little sister met a heartless man. She gave up everything for this man, but was heartlessly abandoned. She even died because of this man. I asked her many times who this man was when she was alive. But my little sister never told me. Emo Tianji's tears and murderous aura bloomed together. He fiercely gritted his teeth and said, "If I knew who that man was, I would tear him to pieces. Even if he was the son of the overlord of upper three heavens, I would kill him. Even if I had to sacrifice the entire Emo clan, I would do it. My biggest regret is that I don't know who the man who killed my little sister is." Emo Tianji lowered his head and cried bitterly. Chu Yang was also drunk at that time. He couldn't help but ask, "What's your little sister's name?" "My little sister's name. I never dare to mention it. Once I mention it, I'm heartbroken." Emo Tianji smiled bitterly. He leaned on the table and murmured, "Little sister. Little sister, why didn't you wait until the day second brother took charge of the clan?" Emo Tianji's words stirred up Chu Yang's thoughts. When he thought of Emo Qingwu, he also felt sad. Thus, he told him about his relationship with Emo Qingwu. He remembered that at that time he talked endlessly for the whole night. As for Emo Tianji, he started to stare at him when he was halfway through. His gaze seemed very strange, but he was immersed in his thoughts and didn't notice at all. The next day, Emo Tianji left without saying goodbye and disappeared without a trace. As for himself, he found Emo Tianji's sword in front of his door. The sword that he treasured like his life was broken in front of his door, broken into 2 pieces. From then on, he never saw Emo Tianji again. He always thought that something had happened to Emo Tianji. He even looked for him, but when he went to find the 5th fragment of the Calamity Sword, he was ambushed by Emo Tianji. Everything was clear now. So that's why. He left without saying goodbye and his sword was broken in 2. This was a sign of breaking all ties. Ambushing to kill him was to avenge his little sister. Even though he never mentioned Emo Qingwu's name, with Emo Tianji's intelligence, how could he not know that he was the culprit who killed his little sister? Chu Yang let out a long sigh. For a moment he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. At this time, Emo Qingwu's small body on the bed moved. She let out a painful groan and slowly opened her eyes. She slowly turned her head and looked at the 2 of them. A pair of jet-black, sparkling eyes that were as pure as water. Chu Yang was almost lost in this pair of eyes at the first moment. Emo Qingwu frowned slightly as if she felt the pain in her body. When she saw Emo Changyu next to her, she couldn't help but pout her small mouth and her eyes filled with tears. She was like a bullied little girl who suddenly saw her family. "Little miss, you're awake? How is your wound? Does it hurt?" Emo Changyu quickly and carefully moved closer. His body was hidden from Chu Yang's line of sight. "Uncle Changyu." Emo Qingwu's tears dripped down as she pitifully said, "It hurts. Be good, don't cry. Uncle Chu is here. Don't let Uncle Chu see you like a joke." Emo Changyu quickly comforted her. Seeing her like this, he couldn't help but feel heartache. "Little miss, this time it is all thanks to Uncle Chu Yang." Chu Yang stood to the side, stunned. His whole body twitched, and his face was full of black lines. "Uncle Chu Yang? That's my wife." Chu Yang almost wanted to stand up and raise his arms in anger. Emo Qingwu softly snorted and raised the back of her hand to wipe her tears. She looked at Chu Yang and her small face blushed. She nodded and saluted. "This niece thanks Uncle Chu Yang. Little Wu will never forget Uncle Chu Yang's life-saving grace." Chu Yang hurriedly shook his hand. He chuckled and said, it's nothing. This cough cough cough. I'm not much older than you. You can just call me elder brother Chu Yang. Calling me uncle makes me sound old." Emo Qingwu's delicate little face was startled. She raised her head and looked at Emo Changyu with her big eyes. Emo Changyu glared at her and said, "That won't do. You cannot mess with seniority. How can you call someone who should be called Uncle Chu Yang brother? Absolutely not." Chu Yang's face suddenly became bitter. He looked at Emo Changyu and frowned. He really wanted to drag this guy out and rape him. Earlier, he thought he was a loyal and courageous man. Now why did he become so annoying? "Uncle Chu Yang." The little girl pouted. "I want to drink water." Oh. Chu Yang's face was full of black lines, but he didn't dare to be negligent. He quickly brought the water over. It seems like I have to be this uncle for a few more days. Let me do it." Emo Changyu's protectiveness was clearly too strong. He took the water from Chu Yang's hand and carefully fed Emo Qingwu. Uncle Chengyu, when will my second brother come? Emo Qingwu blinked her long eyelashes. Her small face was full of grievances. I want second brother to beat up all those bad people. Second brother will be here soon. Emo Chengyu was a bit embarrassed. Was Emo Tianji still at the bottom of the cliff? Or was he also ambushed? How would he know when Emo Tianji would come? He gently helped Emo Qingwu lie down. It must have affected her wound. The little girl's eyebrows furrowed again. Chu Yang and Emo Qingyu's hearts twitched. Emo Chengyu held Emo Qingwu's small hand, and a stream of energy slowly entered her meridians to check her injuries. Suddenly his face changed. His tanned face turned as white as snow in a blink of an eye. His whole body trembled. Then he was dumbstruck. Suddenly, he spat out a mouthful of blood and said in a heartbroken voice, How could this be? He discovered the problem with Emo Qingwu's 3-yin meridian. Earlier, when he heard Chu Yang's probing, he already had an ominous feeling. However, his heart still held on to a sliver of hope. Now that he had confirmed this bad news, he felt as if the world was spinning. Uncle Chengyu, what's wrong? Emo Qingwu cried out in panic. Uncle is fine. This is just some congested blood. After spitting it out, my chest feels much better. Emo Chengyu forced a smile and pretended to be relaxed. You should have a good sleep first. Once you wake up, everything will be fine. Okay. Emo Qingwu obediently closed her eyes. Then she opened them again and said shyly, Uncle Chengyu, you and Uncle Chu Yang are here watching me. I can't sleep, another Uncle Chu Yang. Chu Yang looked up at the sky and sighed. His heart was so tangled that he was about to suffer from internal injuries. Why can't you sleep? Emo Chengyu asked strangely. With Uncle here, you can relax. Chapter 113. Ha! Emo Chengyu laughed. Little girl, you know how to be careful between men and women. Okay, I will talk outside with your Uncle Chu Yang. Little lady, if you feel any discomfort, remember to call me. He turned his head to look at Chu Yang. Brother Chu, why are we talking outside? Suddenly, he was startled as if he had just discovered a new continent. Brother Chu, why is your face so ugly? Chu Yang weakly rolled his eyes. He thought in his heart, why is my complexion so ugly? Why is my face so ugly? My good wife was turned into your niece by you. The fact that I did not break down and commit suicide on the spot is already very good. Was Du Shiqing the one who cured the little miss? What did Du Shiqing say? Emo Chengyu frowned as he sat with Chu Yang on the steps in front of the door. His heart was heavy. Ever since he found out that Emo Qingwu's 3-yin meridian was damaged, Emo Chengyu felt as if he was carrying a mountain on his back. His whole body was like a volcano on the verge of erupting, filled with the gloominess of a mountain storm. Senior Du said that even if all the great medicines in the world were gathered together, they would not be able to. Chu Yang had a good impression of this king-level master who was loyal to his master. Therefore, he did not hide anything and spoke frankly. Then, he looked into Emo Chengyu's eyes. Senior Emo, Qingwu's injury does not have a cure for now. If you let her go back to the clan, I am afraid she would not be able to bear it. How about staying here with me? Emo Chengyu's black eyebrows tightly knitted together. He sighed deeply and said no. Why? Chu Yang's eyes lit up, and he became furious. Don't tell me that you want to take her back and let her suffer endless pain? You should know that her 3-yin meridian is damaged, so the clan's attitude will change immediately. You and I both know what kind of treatment a little brother without any value will receive. Pain is also a member of the Emo clan. Emo Chengyu sighed deeply. In a clan, the clan's interest is more important than anything else. You should know this. Even though you saved her life to the Emo clan, you are still a stranger. Emo Chengyu grunted. Even if we take her back and treat her worse than before, it is still better than leaving her in the hands of a stranger. Even if you are our savior, it is still the same. Moreover, with your current strength, you simply don't have the strength to protect her. If He Hui comes, do you think you can protect the little miss with your power? Emo Chengyu's cold words made Chu Yang feel powerless. This was the truth. No matter what, the fact that he was weak was the cruel reality. Even if Chu Yang had the power of a martial arts grandmaster, he was confident that he could contend with the black demon with the calamity sword. But right now he was only a martial warrior. He wasn't even a martial master. Once the Black Devil came, Mo Qingwu would definitely die. That would not be protecting her but harming her. But how could Chu Yang bear to let Mo Qingwu go back and face the cold-heartedness of the Mo clan? Young Miss is still the family head's flesh and blood, Mo Changyu casually said. Even without the 3-yin meridian, she would still have a good life in the family. Do you believe what you just said? Chu Yang coldly looked at him. You are a king-level master. If your cultivation was suddenly destroyed and you became an ordinary person, even if no one came to bully you, would you be able to handle it? But people have to face reality. Mo Changyu lowered his voice and roared, do you think I don't care? When the little miss was born, her 3-yin meridian was determined. Then I was appointed to be her guide and guardian. From the time she was babbling until today, I watched her grow up like she was my own daughter. When he was injured, he could not wait to treat her with his own body. Do you understand this kind of feeling? I know that when she returns to the family, the little Miss's power will be taken away. She will not feel good, but only in the family can her life be saved. Anywhere else is not possible. If I cannot do it, you definitely cannot. Mo Changyu's eyes became bloodshot as he glared at Chu Yang. His suppressed emotions suddenly exploded. But I will not allow her to be bullied by you after she returns. Chu Yang did not budge an inch. You won't allow it? What can you do? Mo Changyu indifferently looked at him. Although his words were harsh, they were very serious and full of pain. Chu Yang, you saved us, and I am very grateful to you. That is why I am talking to you nicely. But you must know your own weight. The Mo clan is not something you can change, and it is not something I can change. What if I want to force you to stay? Chu Yang's pupils shrank as he asked. Right now I am seriously injured. If you force me to stay, I can only stay here for now. But you must think about the consequences of forcing me to stay. Although I believe you do not have any evil intentions, if the Mo clan finds out, it will only bring you disaster. If the Mo clan finds out, they will also come to take you away. If the Yin clan finds out, they will also raze this place to the ground. Mo Changyu snorted and said, you are a smart person. You will not make such a stupid decision. Chu Yang's head hurt. Forcing her to stay was just an impulse. He knew it was impossible. But he had finally met Mo Qingwu, and under these circumstances, how could he let her go back and suffer? Would he repeat the mistakes of his previous life? But if he did not let her go back, Mo Changyu's words were not wrong. Although Chu Yang did not want to admit it, he did not have the ability to protect Mo Qingwu. If he let Mo Qingwu stay, it would only harm her and himself. Mo Changyu coming to Iron Cloud Citadel to find Du Shiqing was not something that could be hidden from those who were interested. Even at this moment, the pursuers were probably already on the way. They could come here at any moment. This matter, we need to think about it at length. After thinking for a long time, Chu Yang decided to take a step back. Senior Mo, whether you stay or not, your injuries need to be healed as soon as possible. If the enemy chases you, you will have the power to fight. As for the other matters, we will wait for Mo Tianji to come here. Then we can think about it at length. This was the best delaying tactic Chu Yang could think of. When he said the words Mo Tianji, Chu Yang's heart was filled with bitterness. He did not know how to describe the feeling in his heart. He could not help but secretly sigh. This is the only way. My injuries will not be healed in half a month. Mo Changyu's voice was filled with sadness and disappointment. He was sad for himself and for Mo Qingwu. At the same time, he felt a deep sense of guilt and self-blame. His job was to protect the young miss, but the young miss was hurt so badly that she could never recover from it. All these emotions weighed down on him, causing his heart to almost collapse. He knew that Chu Yang's method was the best. He really needed to recover from his injuries. If he forced the young miss to leave while his injuries were not healed, he was afraid that the enemy would cut him into pieces along the way. I have medicine here. It was given to me by Senior Du Shiqing. You are a king-level martial artist, so you naturally know what medicine you need. If you do not have it here, you can ask me. Chu Yang said slowly. Good. Chu Yang paced 2 steps and said, but if you stay here, if the enemy comes, it will be troublesome. It would be better to go to the secret underground room and wait until your injuries are almost healed before coming out. He smiled and said, as you said, if the Hayamo army comes, I will not be able to stop them. Please do not blame me for being too careful. The secret underground room was specially arranged by Chu Yang. Moreover, it was very deep. This was to prepare for the second part of the sword. The location of the secret room was right above the second part of the sword. According to Chu Yang's estimation, he would only need to dig another 20 feet to get the second part of the sword. At this moment it had become a shelter. This is a safe method. I am not so pedantic. Emo Changyu sighed in his heart. If Emo Qingwu was not by his side, as a king-level martial artist, he would rather die in battle than hide like a rat in a hole. But now there was nothing he could do. Wait a moment, I will arrange it. There were no servants on the island where the Heavenly Armament Pavilion was located, so Chu Yang had to do it himself. He made the bed and lit the oil lamp. All kinds of animal fur and cotton blankets were spread out as if they were free. After half an hour, 2 rooms were made. Emo Qingwu's room had been made cozy and warm by Chu Yang. Moreover, the 4 walls had been tightly covered with snow-white cloth. He had even prepared a fragrance at the head of the bed, making the entire room fragrant. TSK. Of course, Emo Chungyu's room paled in comparison. He only threw the things inside and said to Emo Chungyu, you can do it yourself. As long as it can sleep. Emo Chungyu was so angry that he almost choked. While Chu Yang was busy, Emo Chungyu's eyes were fixed on Chu Yang. He felt that this young man was full of mysteries. Who is he? Why does he know the young miss? Moreover, it seems that he cares for the young miss to the point of being meticulous. His martial power is not high either. I know all the young talents of the clans in the 3 heavens. Even if I have not seen them, I have heard people describe them. There is no such person among them, how strange. But since Chu Yang did not want to talk about these things, he naturally would not ask. At least the other party did not have any evil intentions. This was absolutely true. After everything was ready, Chu Yang picked up the sleeping Emo Qingwu and slowly walked down. When Chu Yang reached out to pick up Emo Qingwu, Emo Qingyu also reached out, but Chu Yang gave him a sharp stare. Emo Changyu was a king-level master, but this stare made him unconsciously shiver. Then Chu Yang said, you are so heavily injured. What if you fall and hurt her? Emo Changyu was defeated, so he could only follow behind Chu Yang. Looking at Emo Qingwu sleeping soundly in the secret room, Chu Yang rubbed his hands and said, Senior Emo, I want to discuss something with you. What is it? Emo Changyu was depressed. Why is Zhou Kai scared after being glared at by this little guy? Damn! This old man is a king-level master. What is this little guy's level? Why am I scared of him? What the hell? Chapter 114. Wait until she wakes up. Can we change the way we address each other? Chu Yang scratched his head in embarrassment. His face also turned red for the first time. You see, I'm only 10 years old this year. In fact, I haven't even celebrated my birthday yet. But I'm already an uncle. This is too much. You are only 10 years old? Emo Chungyu was stunned. This guy seems to have power and influence. Plus, he does things according to the rules. His mind is very meticulous. Aside from being a little impulsive when it comes to the little miss, everything else is well thought out. Yet, he is only 10 years old? Yes. Chu Yang chuckled. He did not ask about shoes. Emo Chungyu happily agreed. He had thought about it and felt that it was inappropriate for Emo Qingwu to call Chu Yang uncle. Pu Qingwu was only 10 years old. Calling him uncle was not a problem. But when Emo Tianji and Emo Tianyun arrived, they were much older than Chu Yang. They were Emo Qingwu's blood brother and sister. They were of the same generation, plus Chu Yang was so nice to the little miss. Calling him uncle or brother would be the same. He cared so much about this title. It seemed like he really liked the little miss. The little miss was smart. Everyone loved her. No wonder Chu Yang liked her so much. At this moment, Emo Chungyu's heart was filled with pride. Of course, Emo Chungyu would never have thought that Chu Yang would be so beastly as to have feelings for an 8-year-old girl. This was simply impossible. No matter who it was, seeing an 8-year-old girl, no one would be so beastly as to have such thoughts, right? But Chu Yang just had to do it, because this was not someone else. This This was Emo Ching Wu. Chu Yang stood under the night sky. He did not sleep at all. Tonight he did not practice martial arts for the first time. One moment he smiled, the next he frowned, and the next he sighed. I finally met her, but I got hurt. And she is still so young. King of Hell Chu was a little troubled. Oh my God, when will she grow up? How can I control this? Being overly protective would create a feeling of being an elder, and that would be counterproductive. Girls at this age were at their most malleable. If they were to be left with the impression of being an uncle with a deep-rooted motive, then everything would be for naught. If he was too distant from her, it would cause her to dislike him. What if she hated him from a young age? That would be even harder to deal with. Moreover, how should Emo Ching Wu's injury be treated? Thinking of this, Chu Yang's heart was in a mess. Her injury is curable. Just as he was letting his imagination run wild, the voice in his consciousness suddenly appeared. Can the tribulation sword be cured? Chu Yang was overjoyed like a drowning man who had suddenly grabbed onto a life-saving straw. That's right. Xiao Hun seemed to sigh as well. Looks like this guy's inner demons are really stubborn. Emo Ching Wu is only a year old and this guy is actually lovesick. And he's actually not practicing martial arts. That wouldn't do. Don't forget that tribulation's carvings have the effect of purifying medicinal power. Moreover, the core essence of the medicine has been cut off by tribulation. That is the real life-saving thing. Xiao Hun said helplessly, "Look at your dantian at the sword hilt." Chu Yang was overjoyed. He calmed his mind and checked. In his dantian at the illusory transparent sword hilt, there was half a drop of something dark inside. This is it? Yes, this is it. As long as it becomes a drop, I can take it out and heal Emo Ching Wu's injury. Xiao Hun said, but there is one thing that needs to be done first. Just accumulating medicinal power alone won't achieve this goal. You have to get the second fragment of tribulation before you can gather enough medicinal power for this drop of heavy pill. You can take it out. I will gather enough medicinal power in the shortest time, at all costs, and advance to the second fragment of tribulation. Chu Yang's eyes focused as he said quietly, "Let's hope so. But I have to remind you, within a year, I'm afraid you won't be able to meet this requirement." Xiao Hun reminded him, "If you forcibly take out the heavy pill before it reaches that level, not only will it not be beneficial, it will also be harmful." Xiao Hun sighed and said, "Originally, I could have hastened its ripening, but what? I almost forgot, you are Tribulation Sword Xiao Hun. Of course you can do it." Chu Yang said happily, "Hastening the ripening process, wouldn't everything be fine? You idiot." Xiao Hun was depressed. "You didn't realize that I exist in your consciousness, but tribulation is in your dantian? I have not become one with him. How can I hasten its ripening? Moreover, during this time you only got so many medicinal materials from tribulation. Tribulation has already absorbed all of them. Even with the materials from beyond the heavens sect, there is less than half a pill. How can it be easy to gather enough? Plus, what you have in Iron Cloud Citadel are all ordinary herbs. With these, even if you absorb 100 times more, it will not become a heavy pill." Xiao Hun poured a bucket of cold water on Chu Yang. "As long as there is hope, I will try my best to get it. If these herbs are not enough, then I will go look for other treasures. Whether it is stealing, robbing, or cheating, I will get it." Chu Yang said fiercely, "Even if I have to rob all of the great clans in heaven, I will get this heavy pill. You have guts." Xiao Hun said with either admiration or speechlessness. Then he disappeared without a trace. Now this little guy should have enough motivation and pressure, right? With his current martial warrior cultivation, he actually wanted to rob all of the great clans in heaven. If this was not praise, then there was nothing else to say. Xiao Hun was very proud after he disappeared. Chu Yang sank into a deep state of meditation. There was never a moment when he was so eager to increase his strength. Ching Wu is in danger. I have to protect her. The next morning, Chu Yang looked around the heavenly armament pavilion at Flowing Rich Lake. Then he gave Emo Ching Wu some advice. Looking at Emo Ching Wu's apple-like face, Chu Yang reluctantly left. When he arrived at Butian Pavilion, he saw Chang'ong sitting there with a frown on his face. Seeing Chu Yang with a ferocious mask, he could not help but jump in fright. He stood up with a guilty conscience. "Last night, the operation did not go well?" Chu Yang snorted. He suddenly felt that this old man was not pleasing to the eye. He was already in a bad mood. Early in the morning, what awaited him was news of a failed operation. Looking at this old man's widowed expression, Chu Yang knew for sure. I didn't catch anything last night. Yes. Last night, we disguised ourselves and entered the Tang mansion. But we found that Tang Xiansheng had already disappeared. His wife was at home, but in order to avoid alerting the enemy, we only set up surveillance cameras and did not disturb them. Chang'ang said carefully. Strangely enough, Chang'ang was a revered martial artist. His cultivation was much higher than Chu Yang's, but when Chu Yang glared at him, Chang'ang felt his legs tremble. Tang Xiansheng is gone, but old basket is still here? Behind the mask, Chu Yang grinned. This guy is really ruthless. In order to set up a trap, he actually used his own wife as bait. I don't know if he's really an old man or if he's just pretending, but it's not like we didn't get anything out of it. When the sky was just beginning to brighten, Boss faintly heard Jinxiao's voice. It turned out that an invisible flying insect had flown into the Tang family. Caught it. Chang'ang was a little proud. He took out a bird from his bosom as if he was presenting a treasure. After all, the formless mound came and went without a trace. It was extremely difficult to catch one. Not to mention a revered martial artist, even a martial king would not be able to catch up to its speed, let alone see through its disguise. However, Chang'ang was a lucky bastard. He did not catch Tang Xiansheng. He knew that when he returned, he would definitely be scolded by King of Hell Chu. Therefore, he persevered and waited there. Just as dawn was about to break in the east, the invisible falcon had coincidentally flown over thousands of miles and arrived here. It was the most tiring time and the time was just right. It was already dawn, but the invisible falcon was still in the middle of the night. How could it not attract people's attention? Therefore, Chang'ang was able to catch it in one fell swoop. Not bad. It must have been hard for you to bring a net with you, Chu Yang said in a sarcastic tone. It was hard to tell whether he was praising or winking. Chang'ang's old face turned red. He was a little embarrassed. Because Chang'ang liked to eat good food, he especially liked to eat the meat of birds. From eagles to sparrows, everything was delicious to Chang'ang. Therefore, he always carried a small net with him. The harder it was to catch a bird, the more delicious it was to Chang'ang. Even at Butian Pavilion, as long as Chang'ang was present, there would be an extra dish on the table. This guy was so greedy that he would not even let a bat go. This was purely a blind cat catching a dead end, and that formless nose just so coincidentally fell into his hands. It really was the heavenly sect. It was so coincidental that it was unbelievable. Chu Yang removed a small bamboo tube from the invisible falcon's feather. He poured out a small dragon ball and sealed it tightly. He pinched the dragon ball with his finger and a small crack appeared on it. A ball of paper rolled out. He carefully opened it and flattened it. On it was written, "Dangerous." Only these two words were scribbled, but they were written with strong strokes and silver hooks. Although the handwriting was scribbled, it contained a sense of majesty. It was steady and agile. The signature was a faint seal. The two words Diwu could be faintly seen. It was written by Diwu Qingro himself. Chu Yang's words made Chang'ang's spirit rise. It seems that I still underestimated Tang Xiansheng. This is a big fish that I have never seen before. Chu Yang's face was heavy. He carefully put the note Diwu Qingro wrote into his bosom. Diwu Qingro's Golden Horse Riders department had countless people who had important information, but he personally wrote a letter for Tang Xiansheng. How could Chu Yang not know the meaning behind this? Tang Xiansheng's importance could be imagined. Chapter 115. What we need to pay attention to now is not to alert the enemy. People like Tang Xiansheng have countless ways to escape from Iron Cloud Citadel. Chu Yang pondered, plus this Tang Xiansheng, is he really just a simple scholar? Does he have a peerless martial art? That is hard to say. We need to inform Heavenly Secret Hall about this and carefully investigate. I missed so much. Wu Qianqian sucked in a breath of cold air. Chu Yang's analysis included countermeasures and counterattacks. From Diwu Qingro to Tang Xiansheng, he analyzed everything. Wu Qianqian suddenly felt that if Chu Yang really captured Tang Xiansheng, Diwu Qingro would suffer a great loss. Of course, that was if Chu Yang's speculation was correct. However, Chu Yang's analysis also missed one thing. Wu Qianqian was sensitive enough to find out. Chu Yang, you said so much, but you did not say. If the enemy's king-level master really came, how would you deal with him? How would we stop him? How would we arrange things? Chu Yang rubbed his temples and frowned. This is the only thing I am worried about. We do not have a king-level master. Facing a king-level master, we have no good way to deal with him. Chu Yang's side, we definitely have one on Tai's side. Otherwise, Diwu Qingro would not let go of the chance to easily assassinate Tai. However, as long as he comes to protect me, Tai's side will be in danger. We cannot take this risk. Wu Qianqian's beautiful face turned pale. Is there really no way? Chu Yang's gaze was profound as he slowly said, I only hope that he doesn't come so quickly. Then he shook his head and said, but judging from Diwu Qingrou's swift and decisive style, this person is probably already on the way. Wu Qianqian suddenly felt her heart sink. She looked at Chu Yang's eyes with tears in them. She knew that Chu Yang was only a martial warrior. In the face of an assassination by a king-level master, he would not have the slightest ability to fight back. The current Butian pavilion, in front of the opponent's king-level expert, was practically nothing. Chu Yang smiled bitterly in his heart. If things were really as he guessed, then he really didn't have anyone protecting him. Gu Duxing had gone out to recruit soldiers, and it was not certain when he would return. Mo Changyu was seriously injured, and it would take a while for him to recover. Plus, even if he had the strength to fight, he would have to guard against He and I. As for a revered saber master like Chang'ang, Chu Yang reckoned that Chang'ang would be nothing more than food in front of a king-level expert. If Black Devil and Golden Horse Riders Department's experts were to find this place together, then there would be more than 3 king-level experts coming to cause trouble for him. Even in his previous life, he would not have been able to withstand such a lineup, let alone now that he was a martial warrior. Moreover, besides Diwu Qingro and He Mo, there was also the possibility of the Yen clan. This matter was really quite serious. Chu Yang closed his eyes and pondered. He wanted to find a way out of this mess. To avoid or resolve this crisis, these are just our guesses. Maybe a king-level expert won't come. Wu Qianqian said weakly. Impossible. If we can think of this, how can Diwu Qingro not think of this? You have to know that with Diwu Qingro's deep foresight, he can only think further than us. He will not miss anything. Chu Yang said softly. Meticulous planning. Diwu Qingro was worthy of these words. Even the current Mo Tianji was still a child. He was far from reaching the level of the master of calculation and manipulation, but Diwu Qingro had been immersed in this realm for many years. How could he not think of this? Chu Zai thought quietly, and his brows furrowed together unconsciously. For a long time he could not figure out anything. If it was purely about intelligence, even if Chu Yang was not as good as Diwu Qingro, he would not be so helpless. But in the face of such absolute martial strength, he really could not think of a way. Hiding was not something that could be avoided. Tai Butian's side could not protect him. According to Chu Yang's estimation, even if Tai Butian had experts by his side, there would not be many, and most 1 or 2. If they came to protect him, the city gate would be empty. Tai Longcheng's side should also have experts, but he could not count on them. Butian Pavilion's strength was not enough. His only hope now was the Mo clan's side. But the ruthlessness of the Mo clan was something that Chu Yang deeply experienced. They might not help him just because he saved Mo Qingwu. Moreover, Mo Tianji was among the people who had come from the Mo clan. Chu Yang's feelings towards Mo Tianji were very complicated. But one thing was for sure. Even if Mo Tianji wanted to protect him because he saved his sister, Chu Yang would still refuse. This was related to a man's self-esteem. Chu Yang would not accept Mo Tianji's protection. Chu Yang's only advantage was that he had been deliberately creating a diversion during this period of time. As a result, not many people knew about his true appearance. Perhaps this was the only advantage he could take advantage of when facing the assassination of a king-level master. We will cross that bridge when we come to it. Chu Yang could not figure it out, so he simply did not think about it. He stood up and said, so what if it is a king-level master? He might not necessarily not die. With Calamity Sword in hand, As long as he could get close and have the opportunity to attack, he might be able to kill a king-level master. By the way, Chu Yang, the sect tournament of Beyond the Heavens sect has ended. Do you want to know the result? Wu Qianqian tried hard to make Chu Yang relax. Oh, how about Tan Tan? Chu Yang's mind turned. Thinking about what Wu Qianqian said, he suddenly felt that the words Beyond the Heavens sect were so distant. Master Junior Martial Brother. This time's tournament was very cruel. Wu Qianqian said. A few martial uncle's disciples were killed or injured. Tan Tan did not participate. The people who died were mostly second martial uncle, fourth martial uncle, and martial uncle's disciples, right? Chu Yang smiled. How did you know? Wu Qianqian opened her black eyes wide. How could I not know? Chu Yang smiled bitterly. The traitor of Beyond the Heavens sect was most likely these three people. Li Jinsong had already been determined. The other two were the biggest suspects. The rewards for this tournament were much more generous than the previous ones. Wu Qianqian blinked her eyes in envy. When I first heard about it, I almost ran back to participate in the tournament. Chu Yang snickered. First, he threw out the temptation of great rewards. Then, he promised the position of the sect to lure the disciples to kill each other. With Wu Yunliang's skill, it was not difficult to do this. It seemed that Miao Yunliang had already started to clean up Beyond the Heavens sect. Tan Tan did not participate because he wanted to protect Miao Yunliang. When the sect was almost cleaned up, Miao Yunliang would come to Iron Cloud. At that time it would be the beginning of the biggest trap. It would also be the biggest crisis for Beyond the Heavens sect. Hopefully it would be delayed a little bit. Chu Yang thought to himself. In the near future, he really did not have the slightest confidence. I will go and capture Tang Xansheng first. Chu Yang sighed and walked out of the door. He was frowning a moment ago. But, the moment he let go of the load on his mind, he became relaxed. Only Wu Qianqian was frowning in her room. She was thinking hard. How to help Chu Yang escape this disaster? Thinking that Chu Yang might die, Wu Qianqian's heart ached. Why Chu Yang was expelled from the sect, she did not know. Why he came to Iron Cloud after being expelled, she also did not know. But she knew that Chu Yang would not abandon Beyond the Heavens sect. Chu Yang having such a position in Iron Cloud was the best thing for Beyond the Heavens sect. Chu Yang could not die. Perhaps there were other thoughts in her mind. Wu Qianqian did not know what she was thinking or why she was so anxious. She was only thinking hard. Her eyes kept moving. Finally Wu Qianqian's gaze fell on Chu Yang's room. It was the ferocious mask and the black robe that Chu Yang wore. She did not move for a long time. When Chu Yang came out, he had already returned to his normal chalky appearance. He swaggered through the streets. Tang Xansheng lived in Iron Cloud Citadel. It was a very inconspicuous official's residence. From the outside, it looked no different from an ordinary residence. One would not be able to tell that it was the residence of a court official. There was only a big red plaque at the entrance with the two words, Tang Residence, written on it. It showed that the person in this courtyard was not an ordinary person. It was a big house with 3 rooms. It was located next to the residence. The entrance was a north and south heaven road. From the entrance there was a 3-way intersection. Normally officials would not choose a place like this because it was noisy. First, it was messy and everyone liked peace and quiet. Second, it was dangerous. On the street to the right of the house, there were a few other residences of officials. They were not close to each other. If one were to look at the residences of the officials, then Tang Xansheng's Tang Mansion was basically all alone. Behind the house, there was a forest that extended out. Chu Yang looked at the structure and location of the house and could not help but sigh. This house was clearly intentional. It was easy to escape, easy to do things in private, and easy to communicate with outsiders. However, the residences of officials were usually given by the court. What method did Tang Xansheng use to get here? At the 3-way intersection, an old man dressed in rags was setting up a small stall with a few pounds of melons on it. Under a big tree not far from him, 2 old men were focused on playing chess. It was as if they did not care about the hustle and bustle of the city. Chu Yang slowly walked over. He grabbed a handful of melons and tossed them up and down. His expression and movements were full of frivolity. He tilted his eyebrows and squinted his eyes as he asked, "Old man, do these melons have kernels?" The old man hurriedly nodded and bowed. Sir, how can you sell them if they don't have kernels? Wouldn't that make me a scammer? Look, this one is empty. Chu Yang reached out and squeezed. With a pop, he squeezed open a melon. It's just that the kernels are a bit small, huh? The old man laughed awkwardly and said, Sir, you can choose a watermelon. This one is really big. Sir, try squeezing it. This white melon is not big yet. Cough, cough. Oh. Chu Yang grabbed a handful and threw down a few copper coins. This old man was Chang'ong in disguise. Earlier, Chu Yang asked him about his recent situation. The melon is empty. This was the secret code. You can try squeezing a watermelon. In other words, you can go to the house on the west side, but you can't guarantee anything. Chapter 116. Ever since Chu Yang came here, he had been thinking about it. Chang'ang's reply added to the doubts in his heart. Watermelon? It shouldn't be. Looking at the complicated terrain, Chu Yang could not help but ask himself, if I were Tang Xiansheng, what would I do? How would I hide? With this, Chu Yang began to put himself in Tang Xiansheng's shoes, and slowly began to expand. The situation is not obvious. Butian Pavilion has not made a move on me yet. I am just preparing for a rainy day. I will hide and observe the situation. If it is not good, I will immediately leave. If it is not bad, I will come back and tell others that I went to visit a friend. This should be Tang Xiansheng's mentality. Then Tang Xiansheng must be nearby. He must be paying attention to Tang Manor's movements. The roads here extend in all directions. If he wanted to pay attention to Tang Manor's movements, where would I choose? Chu Yang pondered. Chang'ong didn't choose the best position in order to deceive others. It must be known that the best position was often the best position to be monitored. There would always be people watching. Instead, he chose the worst position. If Chang'ong did not choose, then with Tang Xiansheng's wisdom, he would not choose either. Then he would choose a less important position. And now, Chang'ong was occupying a position that was slightly inferior to the others. Chu Yang's eyes swept around indifferently, and found several positions in the vicinity that were most suitable for monitoring the Tang Mansion. Since the first two positions were not suitable, then the third position would be. Chu Yang's eyes looked at the two old men playing chess under the tree. Both of them had white hair. They looked like they were more than 10 years old. Their faces were full of wrinkles, and they looked very old. Both of them were focused on the chessboard. One of them was facing Chu Yang with a relaxed face. He was leisurely waving his fan. The other one had his head down. His face was full of deep thought. It seemed like he was thinking hard about his opponent's moves. These two old men are very refined. They are so old, yet they are still sitting so steadily. Chu Yang's heart was moved. He gave Chang'ong a secret look. Two old brothers, you must be tired from playing chess. Eat some melons, haha. Chang'ong staggered over with a humble smile on his face. He put down a handful of melons by the chessboard and said enviously, You two are so lucky. You can play chess for 2 days straight and don't have to worry about anything else. Unlike me, this old man who still has to run around for a living. The old man with a relaxed expression smiled and said, Your brother is also very fortunate. Isn't being healthy and healthy the greatest blessing? Although his voice was old, it was still very elegant. Chang'ong nodded repeatedly and retreated with a hunched back. Playing chess for 2 consecutive days. A mysterious light flashed in Chu Yang's eyes as he came to a conclusion. After looking at the tree for a while, he wobbled his way to the 2 old men who were playing chess and bent over to look at the chessboard. This game is not easy to break. Chu Yang clicked his tongue repeatedly. Wonderful. How wonderful. The old man who was deep in thought immediately turned around and glared at him. What nonsense are you talking about? Do you know how to play chess? It was as if the anger of being suppressed in the chess game was all vented on this little brat who did not know what was good for him. Oh, look here. You can't dig, you can't jump, and you can't space. It's sharp and it's sharp and it's broken. This seems like a good move, but it also has the danger of being completely wiped out. It's really not easy to deal with. Chu Yang opened a folding fan with a schwa sound. Then he closed it again with a schwa sound. The folding fan had already touched the chessboard. Chu Yang's words made Chang'ang's whole body tremble. He did not know anything about chess, but Chu Yang's words clearly had a different meaning. Digging is not allowed, jumping is not allowed, space is not allowed, break is not allowed. Fuck. Isn't this referring to Tang Xiansheng's current situation? Could it be that after 2 days of squatting here, the biggest target is sitting right behind my butt? Thinking about this, Hall Master Chang almost wanted to stuff his head into his pants. He swore to capture someone, and the person was sitting right behind my butt for 2 days without me noticing. This is a joke, oh? In your opinion, young man, what do you think should be done? The relaxed old man looked at Chu Yang and asked with a smile. In my humble opinion, this move should be flying. Chu Yang opened his fan with a swish and slowly fanned himself twice. He said meaningfully, flying too slow is also not good. What do you think? Official Tang? Once Chu Yang said this, the atmosphere suddenly became heavy. In front of him, the old man whose back was facing him suddenly stiffened. Chang'ong, who was behind him, suddenly stood up and turned his head. He looked at the old man who had been looking at his back in disbelief. His face was as red as blood. This is so embarrassing. This is so infuriating. I actually made the mistake of being in the dark. The old man's expression did not change. He looked at Chu Yang and slowly said, flying? That's one way. But little friend, what you've said is very profound. I also feel that it is very profound. I still don't dare to believe it. Chu Yang whispered with a smile, I have heard of this saying before, but I do not understand it. You can wear out iron shoes in vain, but you find it without any effort. Today I finally understand. Lord Tang, I wonder if you understand what I'm saying? The old man's eyes flashed with a smile. I still don't understand. Why do you call me Official Tang so confidently? Looking up at the mountains and rivers, the sky is endless. Chu Yang said casually, looking down at the yellow earth of reincarnation. These 2 sentences were written by Tang Xiansheng on a certain year when an important official of Iron Cloud, Tai Hun, died on the battlefield. Reading them out at this time had a special meaning. It also dispelled Tang Xiansheng's thoughts of denying it. I have already seen through your disguise. If you continue to deny it, it will be a joke. Tang Xiansheng smiled warmly. Little brother, your memory is very good. You flatter me. Chu Yang cupped his fists and smiled. I presume little brother is the legendary master of Butian Pavilion? King of Helchu? Tang Xiansheng's smile was very gentle. His eyes were also very gentle. There was no trace of panic. But as soon as he said this, the other old man's face suddenly showed a look of despair. It is King of Helchu. This was the fiercest man in Iron Cloud who was infamous for his ferocity. I don't dare. That is a vulgar nickname. It is an insult to Official Tang. Chu Yang said humbly. I did not expect that the infamous King of Helchu who slaughtered Iron Cloud with one sword would be so young and handsome. Tang Xiansheng smiled gently and said in a clear voice, however, I really don't understand. How did you find me? How can you be so sure that I am here? I was not sure. It was just luck. Chu Yang calmly said, my method may be useless against ordinary slow-witted people. But Official Tang is a smart person among smart people. I came here to test you out of luck. But after coming here, I was sure that it was you. Oh. Tang Xiansheng looked at him with a curious expression. A place like this is the easiest place to spy on Tang Manor. Other places are easier to see, but they are too big of a target. Official Tang has a big tree in front of your door like an umbrella. There have always been people playing chess here. I presume Official Tang already arranged this. And if you appear here one day in disguise, no one will notice. Chu Yang smiled slightly. Not bad. Tang Xiansheng also showed an appreciative smile. His eyes gradually became sharp. Official Tang is not sure if I will make a move on you. This is the best place to watch. Even if it is dangerous, you can wait here for people to come to your aid. Plus, no matter what happens in the manor, as long as you are not exposed, you will be able to see it. Official Tang is calm and resourceful. You know better than anyone that it is dark under the light. I presume that if Official Tang can find a way to hide in Butian Pavilion, that would be the best place to hide. Chu Yang smiled gently. I came here today to invite Official Tang to the best place to hide. Tang Xiansheng shook his head and smiled. He sighed, not bad, not bad. King of Helchu is indeed worthy of being called King of Helchu. He paused for a moment. Then he squinted his eyes and smiled. But why don't you make a move immediately? Why are you talking nonsense with me? You should know that the more you talk, the more likely you are to make mistakes. You are the famous king of Hell Chu. Don't tell me you don't even know this? Tang Xianshang's pupils suddenly shrank and shot out a needle-like brilliance. Because there was an accident. Chu Yang smiled calmly. More importantly, I did not expect official Tang to be a top martial artist. If I made a move, I would not have been confident. Official Tang did not make a move because he was angry. Chu Yang laughed mischievously. A scheme that I thought I was so proud of was seen through. Moreover, my identity that I thought was the most secret of was also dug out. For a person with unparalleled intelligence, this is undoubtedly a disgrace. Even if I die, it would not be as humiliating as official Tang right now. So official Tang was playing with me. A mocking look appeared in Chu Yang's eyes. Official Tang wants to humiliate me when I'm at my proudest moment after I expose you, and then use your peerless martial arts to break out of the encirclement and escape. Or you could just kill me right here. Chu Yang said indifferently. Official Tang, this is your mentality. I wonder if I'm wrong? Yes. Tang Xiansheng slowly stood up and said, I worked hard for 13 years, but you destroyed it in one day. And you found me. If I do not kill you, how can I forget about this hatred? He coldly snorted. And your so-called Butian Pavilion in my eyes is only a few toys. Since you do not have the ability to catch me, you can only wait for me to humiliate you. Chu Yang's guess was not wrong. The truth was exactly what he planned for the worst. This Tang Xiansheng was a martial artist. Moreover, he did not put Chang'an in his eyes. He wanted to ambush Chu Yang. Chu Yang wanted to catch him and he wanted to kill Chu Yang. Chapter 117. That's why I am waiting. Moreover, I want to have a good chat with official Tang. Chu Yang smiled and gently fanned himself with his folding fan. It seemed as if he was very nervous from the beginning to the end, but he had to maintain his composure. He kept fanning himself. I'm not delaying. I'm sincerely asking for your guidance. Chu Yang was not delaying, but at this moment, many people in black appeared around them. They were Lai Yang's subordinates from Butian Pavilion. They were coming from more than 100 feet away. Coupled with his words, it made people feel like they were lying in front of their faces. You think you can stop me with just these people? Tang Xiansheng laughed softly and said, Minister Chu, your precious body is too close to me. Yes, I am also very helpless. Chu Yang helplessly waved his fan. But if I am not close enough, official Tang will not be able to smell the crisp bone powder on this fan. Crisp bone powder? Tang Xiansheng's face changed. What is this? Ever since his identity was exposed, this was the first time Tang Xiansheng showed a look of fear. Crisp bone powder? This is just a small gift for official Tang since we first met. The value is meager. It is not enough to show my respect. I hope official Tang will not take offense. Official Tang may not have noticed, but ever since I came here, I have been standing in the wind. The wind is blowing from behind me to in front of me. Chu Yang smiled and patiently explained, every time I wave my fan, the wind is a little weak. If the wind is strong, it will blow away. He squinted his eyes and smiled. Official Tang is very knowledgeable. Naturally, you know that the wind is not fixed and the water is not constant. Even in one moment and the next moment, the wind is not the same. Therefore, I am here to bathe in the cool summer wind and have a long talk with official Tang. Naturally, the longer the better. The longer it is, the more time official Tang will have to enjoy this crisp bone powder. Chu Yang gently said, I hope official Tang will not blame me for talking too much. In fact, I am usually a very quiet person. Tang Xiansheng's eyes flashed fiercely. He shook both of his arms. Puff! A gust of wind came out of his body, shaking off the dust on his robe. However, after this shock, his expression changed drastically. What exactly is this bone-softening powder? Tang Xiansheng was shocked to find that the energy in his body had begun to dissipate. Moreover, the rate of dissipation was getting faster and faster. The crisp bone powder is colorless and tasteless, but it is a wonderful powder. Chu Yang continued to fan lightly. When you smell it, your whole body will be powerless, and your vital energy will dissipate. The more you circulate your martial power to resist, the faster it will dissipate. Of course, this kind of light powder is not very effective for an expert like Official Tang. But for the person in front of me, it is very deadly. Oh, just like this. Chu Yang smiled and slowly reached out his hand. He gently grabbed the hair of the old man in front of him and slowly lifted him up. His right hand touched his waist and a shiny dagger appeared in his hand. Chu Yang looked at Tang Xiansheng and smiled. He's dead. His death was inexplicable and light. Truly peaceful. As he said this, his right hand exerted force and the dagger pierced the old man's throat. Blood gushed out crazily in Tang Xiansheng's direction. Chu Yang looked at Tang Xiansheng and did not move. He spun the dagger in his hand and kicked out. A headless corpse flew out. Chu Yang's hand now had a head with white hair. The eyes of despair were wide open and full of disbelief. It is really bloody. Chu Yang casually threw the head forward and smiled. Look, Official Tang, your first bodyguard should also be a martial greatmaster, right? His death was really too kind. This old man was caught by Chu Yang and easily killed. From beginning to end, he did not even make the slightest movement to resist. Even killing a chicken would not be so easy. How did you do it? Tang Xiansheng caught the head of his bodyguard and looked at Chu Yang with grief and indignation. He could not believe that his right-hand man was killed without any resistance. This crisp bone ecstasy powder was very overbearing, but it was not overbearing to the point where a martial great master did not have the strength to resist. When I came over, I was standing right behind him. Haha, Chu Yang said, and at that time your vigilance was at its highest, but you didn't dare to act rashly. The moment the crisp bone ecstasy powder came out, it was right next to him, and most of it was absorbed by him. And the moment I exposed your identity, he began to circulate his martial energy. Haha, Lord Tang, I just said that the more you circulate your martial energy, the faster it dissipates. Why didn't he resist? Tang Xiansheng suddenly realized and wanted to slap himself. At that time he was talking to Chu Yang and was filled with the pleasure of having this king of Hell Chu in the palm of his hand. How could he dare to interrupt him? In addition, when he had no choice but to make a move, I carefully released a trace of murderous aura. Chu Yang said with shame, my cultivation was not high, so my murderous aura was not strong. I could only make him fully alert. Plus I was right behind him, so he did not dare to look back. If he did, I would make the first move. So he could only circulate his martial energy and continue to be on guard. So haha. Of course this wasn't the real situation. Instead, when the guard couldn't hold on any longer, and was about to attack, Chu Yang moved the sword point to the finger of his left hand, and easily stabbed it into the guard's heart from behind. The bodyguard died on the spot, but his body was held up by Chu Yang's knee so he could not fall. King of Hell Chu, even if my martial power is starting to dissipate, I will still kill you. Tang Xiansheng roared and suddenly leaped into the air. Chang'an was startled and immediately rushed forward. He was ready to fight. However, in the next moment the most unbelievable thing happened. Tang Xiansheng's body suddenly trembled in the air. His face showed extreme pain and fear as he screamed, how could this be? Before he could finish his words, he fell down like a bird with broken wings. The chessboard and table were smashed into pieces. Countless black and white pieces splashed out. Just a moment ago, Tang Xiansheng had the demeanor of a transcendent being. He had a card up his sleeve and was filled with the demeanor of a master. However, at this moment, he was thrown into confusion and was battered and exhausted. Official Tang, I'm really sorry. I forgot to tell you that this crisp bone powder can't touch blood. If you haven't broken through the realm of a king-level expert and can't form the real Yuan consolidation disc, you will lose all your strength the moment you come into contact with the smell of blood, even if you have heaven-defying skills. I was afraid that Official Tang did not absorb enough, so I threw you a human head to disperse the blood. And Official Tang really loved your old servant and caught it. This is a bit too close. Chu Yang said apologetically, this is my fault. I didn't explain it clearly to the wise and far-sighted Official Tang. He smiled and said, however, this is the power of wisdom. Official Tang used to use it often. Haha. And I found you because of this reason. If an ordinary person smelled this crisp bone powder, they would immediately fall down. But the two of you didn't even sway a bit. You're really experts. However, such experts shouldn't be playing chess here. Moreover, Lord Tang was too calm when he opened his mouth. So, Lord Tang must have been waiting for me here and deliberately let me find out. Chu Yang's words solved Tang Xiansheng's and Chang Ang's doubts. So that's how it is. Tang Xiansheng struggled to lift his head from the ground and stared at Chu Yang. If looks could kill, then Chu Yang would have died 1,000 times over. His bones would have been ground to dust. After a long while, Tang Xiansheng let out a long sigh and said in a low voice, "You are really powerful. I did not think that I, a revered martial artist, would lose to you without even making a move. Haha, not at all, not at all. Haha." His body loosened and he fell to the ground. At this moment he suddenly felt disheartened. All of his schemes had been exposed in front of the opponent. It was as if he had been tricked to death, not defeated. If he had sensed the danger and left immediately, he would have been thousands of miles away by now. If he had confirmed his ominous premonition when he saw Chang'an, and didn't want to kill Chu Yang, and left immediately, he would have been safe by now. Even if he had retreated the moment he saw Chu Yang, he would still have been safe. Even if he could not have left, if he had attacked immediately, this king of Hell Chu would have died in his hands. However, he didn't do any of those things. Instead, he argued with the other party about wisdom, competed with the other party in scheming, and wanted to climb back up from where he had fallen. He wanted to return the humiliation that the other party had given him back to the other party, but he ended up failing on the verge of success, and even his life was about to be lost here. Step by step, the opponent calculated his plans with great precision. Moreover, he put on a cooperative posture and secretly made a move against him. It had to be said that the moment Tang Xiansheng saw Chu Yang and admitted his identity, he felt a strong sense of defeat. His intelligence was outstanding, and he was confident that everything was under his control. He came to Iron Cloud alone, and with the help of his superior intelligence and intelligence network, he rose up the ranks and played with all the heroes of Iron Cloud in the palm of his hand. With the identity of a spy, he became a saint in Iron Cloud Citadel. If he did not expose himself, he would have waited for Diwu Qingro to attack. Once Tai Butian died, Iron Cloud Nation would be without a leader, and the world would be in chaos. At that time he could have overturned Iron Cloud in an instant. Everything was ready, and he was only waiting for the right time. But at this time he failed miserably. Chapter 118. Tang Xianchao was a proud person. For a person like him to lose to Chu Yang in Stratagem E, it was natural that he would try to get back at Stratagem E. Therefore, Tang Xiansheng swore that he would personally kill Chu Yang in the most humiliating moment of his life, when he thought that his plan was flawless and when he was most proud of himself. For an intellectual, this was a blow that went from the physical body to the soul. Tang Xiansheng really hated Chu Yang to the bone. 10 years of hard work, and Chu Yang just came and turned it into nothing. But Chu Yang took advantage of Tang Xiansheng's hatred and unwillingness to submit to him. Using Tang Xiansheng's mentality, Chu Yang calmly laid down a trap, leaving Tang Xiansheng powerless. When Tang Xiansheng did not think of a stratagem with Chu Yang had already made the first move and used his stratagem to lure him out. When Tang Xiansheng wanted to use his stratagem with Chu Yang used force. When Tang Xiansheng wanted to use force against Chu Yang, he could not move. Despicable? Despicable. But Tang Xiansheng could not help but admire Chu Yang's ability to calculate. He had to admit that from the moment he deliberately let Chu Yang recognize him, he was led by the nose by Chu Yang. This should have been his initiative, but for some reason all the initiative was in Chu Yang's hands. In the end, Tang Xiansheng asked himself, if I were in the same position as him, would I be able to do all this? As a martial warrior, would I be able to defeat and capture a revered martial artist? Moreover, without using the power of others? The answer was, I would not be able to do it. I was not defeated, I was defeated by a stratagem. With my intelligence I was tricked by someone else. What else is there to say? Therefore, Tang Xiansheng sighed and gave up all his efforts. He did not even curse Chu Yang. He just closed his eyes and gave up on resisting. There was one thing Tang Xiansheng did not know. Because of his vengeful heart and his conceit, he had left his mansion before Diwu Qingrou's news arrived. This caused Diwu Qingrou's letter to fall into Chu Yang's hands. Perhaps this was the biggest mistake that he had ever made. Chu Yang saw Tang Xianshang's extreme anger suddenly turn into calmness, and his heart trembled. This Tang Xianshang was in despair, but he was still able to maintain his composure and calm his anger in an instant. He was truly a powerful character. No wonder Di Wuqingro had such high hopes for him. Men, take this old man away. Lock him in the Mending the Heavens room. The one who gave the order was Chang'ong. Chu Yang had already flashed out of the encirclement and silently disappeared from the crowd. When the black-clothed assassins who were several feet away surrounded him, they could only see a mysterious back view. No. Chu Yang. Xianshang. Chu. Oh. Chu. Oh. Great revered martial artist. This weak scholar Tang Xianshang was actually a great revered martial artist. He was actually a super master. Good heavens. I am only a third-grade revered saber artist. As for Chan Yutong, he is only a first-grade revered martial artist. If I really fought with this Tang Xianshang, I'm afraid none of the people here would be able to survive. And Tang Xianshang would still be able to leave. Great revered martial artist. If he wanted to leave, not many people in Iron Cloud Citadel could stop him. Moreover, Tang Xianshang was an extremely cunning person. No wonder he was so confident and so conceited. He actually set up such a trap right in front of Iron Cloud Citadel's door, and used Iron Cloud Citadel to kill and humiliate King of Hell Chu. Thinking of this, Chang'ong felt a chill from the top of his head to the soles of his feet. He remembered Chu Yang's position just now. If Tang Xianshang had attacked without caring about anything, Chu Yang would have been killed in an instant. There would have been no chance of survival. But at that time, Chu Yang's demeanor was relaxed and he was talking cheerfully. He did not seem nervous at all. Minister Chu's mental strength was really strong. What Chang'ong did not know was that Chu Yang was sweating profusely right now. Once the order was given, all the black-clothed men escorted this old man back to Butian Pavilion as if he was their own father. They were escorted in front and behind. Yes, an old man is an old man. Since Tang Xianshang did not reveal his identity, Chang'ong naturally would not reveal his identity to avoid attracting trouble. As for Tang Xianshang's family, Minister Chu had said, "Do not touch them. Keep them." With King of Hell Chu's words, Chang'ong believed that not only would he not dare to touch them, but even Butian Pavilion and General Long Cheng would not dare to touch them. Chu Yang had already returned to Butian Pavilion. His back was also covered in cold sweat. He was so scared that his soul almost left his body. The first thing he did was to call the people of Heavenly Secret Hall over and scold them. Chun Yutong and the others were also unlucky. They were scolded until their faces were covered in photoshopped spittle, but they did not dare to retort. King of Hell Chu's scolding voice shook the roof. "Are you all idiots? No, even idiots are smarter than you. Even pigs are more confident than you. Fuck. What the hell? What kind of information are you all looking for? All of you get the hell out of here. Go home and farm. You will regret it. Eating rice every day has turned you into an idiot, right? A bunch of bastards who can't even see the sky turning dark. You're so stupid that the sun and moon lose their light." King of Hell Chu's rage caused the entire Butian Pavilion to tremble. The people inside were being scolded. Everyone's faces were pale. They lowered their heads and did not dare to look up. The people outside were trembling with fear. Chun Yutong stood at the front and was being scolded. His whole body was covered in spittle. But he could not retort even a single word. Heavenly Secret Hall's report. Tang Xianshang, weak scholar, extremely intelligent and wise. He has no martial strength but is very good at strategizing. He is good at planning and controlling. This was the report that Chun Yutong personally wrote when Chu Yang asked for the third verification. And it was this investigation report that almost caused King of Hell Chu to report to the real King of Hell. A weak scholar suddenly turned into a low-level revered martial artist. This was the difference between heaven and earth. Such a huge mistake could not be forgiven. If something really happened to King of Hell Chu, Heavenly Secret Hall would probably be exterminated by Tai Butian. Even if it was just martial strength unknown, no one has seen him use martial strength, it would have been fine to change the literal meaning. If that was the case, Chu Yang wouldn't have gone to look for her alone. If it weren't for his previous life's experience of going through fire and water, If it weren't for his habit of being cautious, if it weren't for the fact that he always had a backup plan, and if it weren't for Chu Yang's belief that even a lion must use its full strength in a fight, then this time, King of Hell Chu would have been delivering food to Tang Xi and Shang. How dangerous! Chu Yang thought about it and felt his thighs cramping. Too hateful. Even though he came back safely and successfully, this kind of mistake could not be forgiven. If he continued to be so careless, he would have to face Di Wuqing Ro's sinister and cunning peerless elegance. Who knows when he would be wiped out? As King of Hell Chu's roar shook Butian Pavilion, Chen Yutong's savior finally arrived. Chang'ong proudly escorted the old man Tang Xi and Sheng back to Butian Pavilion. King of Hell Chu's attention had been diverted by his return. Reporting to the minister, this subordinate did not fail his mission and brought this old man to justice. I am here to hand over the order. Chang'ong was very arrogant. Looking at Chen Yutong who was being scolded, he took great pleasure in his misfortune. As Yizhuo reported in high spirits, he glanced at Chen Yutong again and again, winking and winking. Even his yellow front teeth were exposed, and he was smiling so widely that his eyebrows could not be seen. Cool. Really cool. Watching others get scolded is cool. Chen Yutong grinned and angrily glared at him. He cursed Chang'ang's ancestors in his heart. Who told you to take pleasure in my misfortune? When Chang'ang arrived, King of Hell Chu was thirsty from all the scolding. He was drinking from a cup of tea. As soon as he heard Chang'ang's triumphant report, he immediately spat out the tea in his mouth onto Chang'ang's face, and then started coughing. Chang'ang's expression was very interesting. He was originally proud and full of smiles. Who would have thought that there would be a sudden rainstorm with some heat? In a flash he became a drowned rat. He reached out and wiped his face. The tea was dripping and he even wiped off a few pieces of tea. He could not help but feel depressed. He secretly glanced at King of Hell Chu and complained in his heart. King of Hell, what happened to you, huh? Chen Yutong saw Chang'ang's sorry state and felt very good. He could not help but open his mouth and laugh. After laughing twice, he realized that he was still a criminal. How could he be proud? Therefore, he quickly shut his mouth and secretly glanced up. He saw that King of Hell Chu was still coughing like an asthmatic. Only then did he feel relieved. Then he looked down and stood perfectly straight. Cough, 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 cough. Chu Yang coughed for a while. Then he raised his head with a red face and angrily shouted, "You still have the face to be proud? Let me ask you, what did I ask you to do?" Chang'ong was tongue-tied. He did not have time to retract his happy expression before it was replaced by one of astonishment. His expression was very strange. He opened his mouth but could not speak. Speak. Chu Yang was very angry. He was unable to restrain his anger. Are you very good? I asked you to spy on others. What did you do? Ah. You sent yourself to people's noses to be spied on. Saying that you are is an insult. Puff. Chen Yutong repeatedly coughed. This is too cool. I can't help it. Chang'ang's face turned red. He did not know where to put his hands and feet. They are right behind your ass. If they fart, they will cover their noses. You are still happily talking to me about watermelons and white melons. Chu Yang was so angry that he felt dizzy. Chu Yang was so angry that he felt dizzy. He gritted his teeth and pointed at Chang Wuang's nose. You say you. I asked you to spy on the enemy. I asked you to deal with the enemy. You were unknowingly used as a trap to deal with me. And you are still so proud of yourself. Chu Yang's fingers trembled. He was so angry that he gasped. Do you know how Zhu's grandmother died? Chang'ong had been scolded until he was dizzy and battered. When he heard the question, he couldn't help but ask, how did he die? Stupid. Fuck. Chu Yang roared. He could not control his anger. With your IQ you are still asking for credit? You are still so proud? You think you are very smart? You are still arrogant and mocking others? You are. How can you? How can you be so thick-skinned? Ha 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 ha. Chen Yutong finally could not bear it. He hugged his stomach and squatted on the ground. His tears flowed out. He was out of breath and his whole body was spasming. I can't take it anymore. Even if my head is chopped off, I have to laugh happily. After a burst of anger, King of Hell Chu finally vented his anger. He said coldly, What else do you have to say? Chun Yutong and Chang'ong were somewhat dejected. No more. Lien Yutong was better. Chang'ong was like a cigar that had been hit by frost. He was so ashamed that he could not show his face. If you don't have anything, why are you still standing here? Do you think you two are very handsome? Do you want me to find a wife for you? Ah! Chu Yang slammed the table and roared like thunder. Why are you still not inviting your grandmother here? Do you still need me to teach you this kind of thing? Do you feel good to be scolded? Ah! The two suddenly regretted that their parents did not give birth to them with 2 more legs. With a schwa sound, they disappeared from the hall without a trace. In the small room inside, Wu Qianqian was holding a pen. She was laughing so hard that she was out of breath. She rubbed her stomach and covered her mouth. Her shoulders were trembling non-stop. This was the first time she had seen Chu Yang so angry. However, Chu Yang's anger could really make people laugh. Naturally, the target of his anger would not find it funny. After a while, Chu Yang came in with a teacup in his hand. Wu Qianqian was still laughing so hard that she wanted to die. Chu Yang was startled. Is it really that funny? Wu Qianqian called out, "Mother." She almost laughed until her intestines were broken. After a long time she held back. However, her shoulders still twitched from time to time. Chu Yang. Wu Qianqian tried hard to say, "Scolding like this, will it cause disgust?" Absolutely not. Chu Yang said confidently, "Scolding people has to be balanced. Right now, the two of them are rejoicing in each other's misfortune. They are in the same boat. Besides, the mistakes that they had made today were unforgivable. If they are not taught a lesson sooner or later, something big will happen." As he said this, Chu Yang sighed. He was somewhat dispirited. Wu Qianqian laughed and said, "However, this time, you are a little too arrogant. I have no choice." Chu Yang sighed. Right now, Butian Pavilion is far from being a true fighting force. If you want to pull them out to compete with Di Wuqingro, these people cannot even compare to a single strand of his hair. The only way is to find a mistake and ruthlessly correct it, and slowly correct it. Only then can we barely fight. If we speak softly every day, I am afraid that when Di Wuqingro comes in, they will still be irresponsible perverts. Chu Yang took a deep breath and said, "The more we scold them now, the less we will suffer in the future. You have to remember, the spirit of an iron-blooded soldier and the valiant morale are not cultivated. They are fought and scolded." Chu Yang said slowly. Wu Qianqian grunted. She carefully thought about the meaning of Chu Yang's words and could not help but fall into deep thought. Not long after, the sound of horses galloping could be heard. Then they suddenly stopped outside Butian Pavilion. Then hurried footsteps could be heard. Tai Butian was wearing a big white turtle robe as he walked in with big strides. He was wearing a white robe and a golden crown. His face was cold and his eyes were like lightning. Behind him there were 2 people following closely behind him. Chu Yang smiled and went forward to greet them. Suddenly, he felt something and his eyes flashed. Just like that, they followed behind Tai Butian. Even though they appeared in broad daylight, they still gave Chu Yang an eerie and illusory feeling. It was as if he was looking at 2 shadows and not real people with flesh and blood. When these 2 people walked, one on the left leg and the other on the right leg, it looked very messy, but it was a perfect harmony. They perfectly made up for any flaws in the other party's body. Moreover, when these 2 people stood together, anyone who looked at them would involuntarily feel that these 2 people were the same person. Moreover, these 2 people seemed to be walking very slowly. However, if one looked carefully, they would often only take 1 step and they would float a distance of several feet. And this distance was enough for other people to take 7 or 8 steps. They didn't walk but floated. With these 2 people following Tai Butian, Chu Yang suddenly felt that Tai Butian's front, back, left, and right were all covered with copper and iron walls. When Chu Yang looked at the other party, these 2 people were also quietly sizing him up. Chu Yang only felt his whole body turn cold and tense. Even the hair on his back stood up. This feeling was as if he was being watched by ghosts. And it was countless malicious ghosts. Chu Yang's gaze finally moved away. But in his heart he was thinking, these 2 people, TSK, they are really big girls taking off their pants. Not simple, not simple. Looks like these 2 people are Tai Butian's final trump card? This is also the biggest reason why Diwu Qingru is so wary of assassinating Tai Butian. Just as he was thinking, Tai Butian had already arrived in front of him. He asked hurriedly, Minister Chu, that person has been caught? In his excitement, Tai Butian was very close. The moment he opened his mouth, Chu Yang instinctively felt a sweet fragrance. He couldn't help but frown. A strange expression appeared in his eyes. Tai Butian seemed to have sensed something. He quietly took half a step back. Caught. Chu Yang rolled his eyes. I almost lost my old life. This guy has never shown himself before. He is actually a low-grade revered martial artist. How impressive. Tai Butian's expression turned serious. How are the casualties in Butian Pavilion? When he heard that the other party was so strong, he naturally thought that Butian Pavilion must have suffered heavy losses. There are no casualties. Cough cough. I used poison. Chu Yang coughed twice and said in a low voice. As soon as these words came out, the two shadowy figures looked at Chu Yang with eyes full of contempt. This kind of contempt was very obvious. Anyone could see it. Chu Yang's heart moved. He raised his head and looked at the two people. Do the two seniors think that using poison in a fight with such a high-level martial artist is blasphemous to martial arts? The two didn't answer. Instead, four pairs of cold eyes looked at Chu Yang. None of us are his match. And behind us are the millions of people of Iron Cloud. If we fight him head-on, we are definitely not his match. If we don't use poison to catch him, he can turn Iron Cloud Citadel upside down. There is no need to. Is that okay? Chu Yang said slowly. There was a hint of contemplation in the two people's eyes. But the contempt in their eyes lessened by more than half. I am not saying this to explain to you. I want you to understand. Chu Yang's gaze was like a knife. He said slowly, the two of you are too protective. The enemy has many tricks up his sleeve. If you still hold on to the spirit of martial arts, if the enemy's Ghost Realm method succeeds, then in the future, you will be the sinners who caused the death of the enemy. You must take responsibility. Take full responsibility. Chu Yang's words had a hidden meaning. Chu Yang's martial power was not high, but his mental power was extremely strong. With the imprint of his previous life and the true heaven-splitting divine technique as his backing, his mental power was at least at the level of a 4th or 5th level revered martial artist. But in front of these two people he felt completely suppressed. His mental power was completely suppressed. Then, these two people were at least king-level masters. Plus, in a king-level land, their level should not be low. With these two people by his side and the cooperation of other masters, Tai Butian was as steady as Mount Tai. In lower three heavens, no matter if it was an assassination or a direct attack, there was absolutely no power that could hurt Tai Butian. Even if the 4 king-level masters of Golden Horse Riders Department under Diwu Qingru attacked at the same time, Tai Butian would still be safe and sound. Even if these two people were no match for him, they were fully confident that they could protect Tai Butian and escape. But in his previous life, Tai Butian was assassinated. Then the only reason was that the enemy used a conspiracy. And these two people, from the look of disdain they gave him, Chu Yang knew that these two guys were the kind of martial artists who were very traditional in their thinking. This was perhaps the biggest weakness of these two people, or perhaps the biggest weakness of Tai Butian's protection. Such people naturally could not deal with the enemy's sophisticated conspiracy. If he could see it, how could Diwu Qingru not see it? Besides, he was a hero who would do anything to achieve his goal. Chu Yang felt that he needed to remind him, because the trajectory of this life had changed. Who knew if Diwu Qingru would take action in advance? You can't do it, the master on the left suddenly said. His voice was dry, as if he had not spoken for a whole year. But we will never do it. After saying that, he shut his mouth. Shut up tight. Tai Butian turned her head to look at him in astonishment. She had never seen these two shadows speak to anyone since she could remember. Even her second uncle Tai Longcheng didn't speak to anyone. She had never expected that they would speak to Chu Yang today. Moreover, they had even praised him. What was even more ridiculous was that there was a hint of apology in their words. This was really strange. Chu Yang nodded, but he was thinking that these two people's views would not be changed so easily. What else did he need to do? Where is that person? Bring me to see him. I want to ask him personally. Tai Butian's face was full of frost. The whole of Iron Cloud had been deceived by this person for 10 years, including Tai Butian herself.